Chapter 446. Rumble. The violent explosion outside shook off the sand and stones on the rock wall, causing them to scatter on the rusty steel corridor that no one had walked through for a long time. "Be careful, everyone." Euphemia, who was following the evacuation from Poseidon, looked at the rock dome that was covered in sand and couldn't help but remind them. "Be careful of the falling rocks above." Darzana, who was walking at the front of the formation, also looked up at the dome above. "Looks like the battle outside is still going on. Euphemia, do you think Warrant Officer can hold on?" Darzana knew that World Burial Einafan and Net Wenyunzi didn't follow Ray Minkai, and she also accepted Ray Minkai's arrangement. However, Darzana wasn't willing to let Ray Minkai be the only one who brought up the rear. "No, Captain, Kai's strength isn't as weak as you think. On the contrary, Kai is very strong. He was much stronger than anyone here. He can definitely hold on until we rush over to support him." What Darzana didn't expect was that Euphemia's attitude and trust almost exceeded her imagination. It was a trust that surpassed everything, and she believed that Ray Minkai would hold on until the end. What kind of experience did Euphemia have to have such a degree of trust in Ray Minkai for such a beautiful and talented girl like her? The moment this question appeared in Darzana's mind, it was interrupted by Jian Jigang, who ran back from the depths of this huge and endless underground facility in a panic. Captain, hurry, come over here. There's a situation." Although Jian Jigang's voice was anxious, he intentionally lowered it so that only Darzana, Jin Sun, and Euphemia could hear. "Lead the way." Darzana didn't hesitate and immediately nodded to let Jian Jigang lead the way. Kaoru and Euphemia, who had disappeared, followed behind them. However, their departing figures attracted Ethylem's attention. "Princess, please be careful." When Adelizer saw Ethylem, who had just sat in the corner for a short while, immediately stood up and tried to follow behind Euphemia and the others, he hurriedly stood up and followed them. Following Euphemia and the others from the brightly lit white walls to the uneven rock walls with obvious traces of heavy machinery digging, Esiram, who had been following them all the way, felt a sense of uneasiness. It was as if something was waiting for her in the depths of this underground space. "You've come." As soon as Ethylem appeared on the trestle that spanned across the huge underground space, Euphemia seemed to have noticed her. She nodded at Ethylem and pointed at the huge underground space below the trestle as if she wanted to show Ethylem something. Euphemia's action stunned Islam, but she didn't suspect anything. When Ethylem looked in the direction that Euphemia was pointing at, her pupils suddenly shrank. A battleship? Below the trestle, a dark, brand-new battleship was lying quietly in the dry dock, as if it was waiting to break out of this underground space and soar into the sky like a dragon waiting to break out of the hole in this underground space. Suddenly, Azilum looked back abruptly. She found that the rock wall opposite the battleship below still had traces of damage. The gravel that kept rolling down from the top until it fell to the front of the battleship was so eye-catching. There are probably other things here, but they should have been taken away by the Mars Iron Armor Cavalry. Darzana's mind was meticulous. She just looked at the silent battleship and the damaged rock wall and guessed a hypothesis that was close to the truth. "Captain, we may be able to start that battleship. In this case, we can support Warrant Officer Kai as soon as possible." Euphemia looked around and made a suggestion that Darzana nodded in agreement. However, when Darzana and the others began to move and organize the refugees who followed them to evacuate to this underground facility to board the black battleship, Euphemia looked at Islam. "Are your thoughts still the same?" Islam nodded vigorously. "Yes, my thoughts haven't changed from the beginning to the end. As long as the news that I'm still alive is announced, then this war will stop." Islam's determination made Euphemia sigh in her mind. As the empress who ruled a huge empire, Euphemia naturally understood that once the war began, it was impossible to stop it with the power of Islam alone. Even if you know that after your existence is announced, you will be killed, your thoughts still haven't changed? Euphemia asked again. "Yes, Even if I die on the spot, I will stop this war that shouldn't have happened until the end. Icelam's gaze was firm. Is that so? Then, it's time for you to enter the stage. Your Highness Princess Islam, other than you, no one can awaken this battleship. Euphemia smiled gently, then raised her finger again and pointed at the black battleship below. What? Islam was taken aback, then immediately understood. In this world, the only equipment that could be related to Islam was probably the body equipped with the Aldnoah reactor. This battleship is equipped with the Aldnoah reactor? But I've never heard of Vice building such a battleship. Islam didn't have any information about the black battleship below in her memory, so she was a little confused. Deucalion. This is the name of the iron cavalry that fell on this island in the upheaval 15 years ago. And his Aldnoah reactor was also transferred to this battleship in the following years. The truth from Euphemia surprised Islam, and she couldn't help but doubt the true identity of Euphemia. What kind of existence would know this secret that even the Vice Empire didn't know about? Don't look at me like that. I heard these things from Minkai. What made Islam even more surprised was that the things Euphemia said were told by Ray Minkai to Euphemia. Is that so? But now is not the time to discuss these things. If this battleship is really equipped with the Aldnoah reactor, then my power may be able to be used. Miss Euphemia, please help me. Although Islam was confused, she still knew that the most important thing was to start the battleship and take everyone away from this island. Well, come on, let's go. Perhaps it was because they were used to evacuating back and forth. The refugees who had just evacuated from the Poseidon quickly and orderly boarded the warship in the dry dock under the command of the Poseidon's crew without saying a word. No one knew the origin of this battleship, but they knew that this battleship may be their only chance to escape from this island. Captain, no, I can't start this battleship. No matter how I input the command, the ship's power furnace never responded. Nina, who was sitting in the helm, shook her head in embarrassment. There's no way to start it? Darzana was surprised by this news, but she felt that it was reasonable. After recalling the silent report submitted by Yubei Koichiro after the Tanegashima incident, Darzana suddenly felt that she was very close to the truth. Let's try again. Our chance to leave this island is on this battleship. Now, it was not important to investigate the truth 15 years ago. The only important thing was to start the battleship as soon as possible and rush out of Tanegashima. Captain, maybe I have a way to start this battleship. At this moment, Euphemia's voice sounded. At the same time, everyone who heard the voice turned around and looked and saw that behind Euphemia, there were two girls who entered the bridge together with her. You're the pair of sisters that Ainafan brought back? Coincidentally, Jie Zhongxue, who was late to the bridge because of arranging the refugees, also saw Iselim and Nina behind Euphemia. Iselim smiled and nodded towards Jie Zhongxue, then walked to the center of the bridge under the puzzled gaze of Darzana and the others. She stood in front of the device with a silver-gray ball placed on it. I have a way to start this battleship. Please get ready, everyone. Iselim looked around, then nodded towards Darzana. Darzana's eyes widened slightly. Clearly, she had thought of a possibility, but she was unable to accept it immediately. It was just that, according to the instinct of a commander, she quickly ordered everyone to get ready to face the possible impact. Iselim silently waited for everyone to get ready, then turned to look at Euphemia. Deep in her eyes was a firm will. In the name of Weiss Empire's first princess. In a whisper that was almost like a chant, the necklace on Iselim's neck lit up with a rainbow light, and the image of the person who had just died in everyone's memory quietly appeared in front of everyone's eyes. That is Her Highness Princess Iziram Vis Iliosia. Darzana straightened her body in surprise, then turned around to look at Euphemia, who was standing at the side. Euphemia, you already knew about Princess Iselim's existence from the beginning. Euphemia smiled slightly, neither admitting nor denying it. Captain, please don't blame Miss Euphemia. This is my one-sided request. Without confirming my safety, I don't dare to easily reveal my identity to the public. After Iselim, who had recovered her true form, softly exonerated Euphemia, she immediately focused everyone's attention on her, including Darzana. Now, I'm going to activate Aldnoah. Everyone, please get ready. After that, Iselim put her right hand on the silver gray ball, slowly took a breath, and softly said, "In the name of Weiss Empire's first princess, Iselim Weiss Eliasia, awaken." Aldnoah. As Iselim's voice fell, a little starlight suddenly bloomed under Iselim's right hand, and in the next second, it bloomed with a warm light that was enough to illuminate the entire bridge as if it was daytime. This is Aldnoah's power. Feeling this warm and gentle light, everyone couldn't help but exclaim, "Boom!" However, this exclamation didn't last long. A slight vibration suddenly woke everyone up. Report. The power furnace is reacting. Now the output is rising. The engine output is beginning to increase. The power channel of all mechanisms on the ship has been connected. The system has completed the self-check. Captain. Nina looked at the originally silent scene in front of her in surprise, but now it was bustling with noise and excitement. "Thank you, Your Royal Highness Princess Iselim." Darzana didn't want to pursue the matter between Euphemia and Iselim now. At this moment, in her mind, there is only the fastest way to leave this seed island. The ship has the most power. Main cannon ready. Target the rock wall diagonally above the warship. Fire. In the underground space of the seed island, the dark warship that had been silent for a long time was reborn because of Iselim's arrival, and the confrontation on the ground had come to an end. The plasma beam sword was still roaring, but its owner kept a vigilant posture and gradually retreated. After meeting up with its teammates, they were on guard against alien in front of them. "Serene." In the sky, Serene's voice came. "Don't panic. Serene, take Deucalion's body away now." Fianna glanced at the sky and also glanced at the Mars armored cavalry not far away from her. She knew that the pilot of the Mars armored cavalry must be sizing up the broken body in Aerie 2's hands. Deucalion. Retreat. Our mission now is not to eliminate the Earth Alliance army, but to bring this body back. In the probing just now, Ray Minkai and Fianna had both used the agreed secret signal and simply exchanged the situation. If it weren't for Fianna's scruples about the body equipped with the rocket fist, it probably wouldn't have dragged on until now and let Fianna propose to retreat. Unexpectedly, the moment Fianna proposed to retreat, the airframe really took the initiative to cover their retreat, allowing Fianna to retreat with a broken Deucalion. Boom! However, before Aerie 2 and the carrier could meet up, a tremor that seemed to overturn the Earth suddenly hit. In an instant, countless gravel and dust flew into the air, and a huge and pitch-black figure broke through the ground with an unstoppable momentum, barging into everyone's eyes with a posture of coming out of nowhere. Deucalion, he's finally out. Looking at the dark warship that broke through the shackles of the Earth and appeared in front of them, Ray Minkai's mouth curved up slightly. Chapter 447. Deucalion, who was taken out of Seed Island by Fianna, was carefully sent into Yonglu City by a transport plane. With the help of a sling, the broken Deucalion was carefully placed on the ground. The surrounding soldiers couldn't help but be shocked by Deucalion's broken appearance. As the strongest fighting force of the Weiss Empire, only knight with a title and loyalty to the royal family could drive the armored cavalry, but it suffered such a heavy blow. The surrounding soldiers looked at each other and didn't know what to say for a moment. Deucalion, on the high platform in the depths of Naku, Zasbrum's face didn't look very good. This was the first time Zasbrum met Deucalion since the disaster 15 years ago. However, the beauty sitting inside Deucalion had already vanished into thin air. Zasbrum, who was reminded of her, quickly hid the trace of sadness in his eyes. He raised his hand and signaled the attendants beside him to dismiss all unrelated people and empty the space in Naku. Then, the transport plane carried by Aerie 2 slowly drove into Naku and stopped next to Deucalion. Only Zasbrum and a few guards? Is this a test? Fianna, who was sitting in Aerie 2, immediately saw Zasbrum standing not far ahead. To Fianna, this gesture might be showing that he trusted Fianna very much, or it might be a test. However, this test was meaningless to Fianna. The reason Fianna came here was not to assassinate Zasbrum, but for a deeper purpose. Therefore, after Fianna turned off the power furnace of Area 2, she left the cockpit openly and stood on the cold floor, waiting for Zasbrum's next move. Zasbrum also saw Fianna's action. For a moment, both sides didn't move. They just stood in place silently and looked at each other. Only when Serene came down from his transport plane did Zasbrum retract his gaze and look at the boy he borrowed from Count Caludio. Serene Troyet. Zasbrum's call made Serene tremble. The boy quickly straightened his body and bowed. Yes, Count Zasbrum. This subordinate is Serene Troyet. Please give me your instructions. Zasbrum nodded slowly. Yes, thank you for your hard work. You can go rest now. I believe you also suffered a lot when you broke through Earth's gravity. Serene was stunned for a moment, but he still respectfully responded to Zasbrum's words. In fact, for Serene, driving a transport plane to break through Earth's gravity wasn't a difficult task. But Serene knew that this Naku was no longer a place he could stand. After Serene left with the attendant, only Zasbrum and Fianna were left in Naku. Fianna von Riot. Zasbrum lifted his foot and walked down from the platform in an unguarded manner. He walked step by step toward Fianna. Yes, Count Zasbrum. I am Fianna von Riot. Fianna bowed slightly and shifted her gaze to the ground, not looking directly at Zasbrum's eyes. At this moment, Zasbrum's footsteps stopped. At this moment, silence quietly shrouded Fianna's head. Perhaps a few minutes had passed, or perhaps dozens of minutes had passed. In this space that seemed to have passed for a long time, Zasbrum's voice slowly rang out. Raise your head. My wife has never bowed her head to anyone except Emperor Visser. I hope that as the last member of the Riant family, you can't throw away this pride. Hearing Zasbrum's words, Fianna's eyes flashed. Then she slowly raised her head and fearlessly met Zasbrum's gaze. She said in a clear voice, Yes, Count Zasbrum, I receive this pride. Yes. At this moment, Zasbrum finally saw Fianna's appearance with his own eyes. From the previous video call, Zasbrum had a new understanding of Fianna's capable temperament. He even vaguely felt the fierce aura of someone who had walked down from the battlefield. In particular, the face that was somewhat similar to Volaine's in Zasbrum's memory made ripples appear in the depths of Zasbrum's memory. However, under his strong willpower, Zasbrum forcibly suppressed the recovery in the depths of his memory. Come with me, Fianna von Riot. There's a lord who wants to see you. Yes, Count Zasbrum. The first meeting between Fianna and Zasbrum ended briefly. But Fianna knew that Zasbrum should have completely accepted Fianna's identity as Fianna von Riot. This way, Fianna's operation in the Visser Empire was basically guaranteed. On the other hand, the situation on Raiminkai's side seemed to be a bit grim. The smooth activation of the warship Deucalion allowed Darzana and the others to successfully escape from their current predicament. It also allowed Raiminkai, Euphemia, and the hidden Esseram to be surrounded by Darzana, Nozomika, Juhu Koichiro, and the others. Can you give me an explanation? Looking at the four people standing in front of her, Darzana slowly exhaled. Darzana could understand Esseram's action of hiding her identity. After all, the fuse that triggered the outbreak of this war was the assassination of Esseram Visser Iliosia. Therefore, after the death of the substitute, it was understandable for the real Esseram Visser Iliosia to hide her identity. In particular, the predicament just now was also because Esseram took the initiative to reveal her identity and activated the Aldnoah reactor of the warship. With such a reason and such a contribution, Darzana couldn't decide on how to deal with the troublesome Ethelum right away. Of course, she couldn't decide how to deal with Esseram, but it didn't mean that Darzana couldn't deal with Raiminkai and Euphemia, who hid the fact that Princess Esseram was Princess Esseram. Captain, are you referring to the matter of hiding Princess Esseram? Rei Minkai's action was undoubtedly asking a question that he already knew the answer. However, Darzana still nodded slowly. I want to hear a truthful answer, not an answer that you're trying to fool me with. Warrant Officer Rei Minkai. Rei Minkai slightly smiled as if he didn't hear Darzana mention the military rank at the end of her words. Captain, in that case, I can only say that I have no comment. Now is not the time to tell you the truth. Rei Minkai's answer made Darzana frown. Warrant Officer Rei Minkai, this is not a place where you can do whatever you want. Hikari, who was standing next to her, suddenly scolded. Deputy Captain Hikari, this is my truthful answer. I don't mean to deceive Captain Darzana, nor do I mean to deceive everyone here. It's just that due to some special reasons, I won't tell you the truth now. Darzana's gaze was fixed on Rei Minkai. Try to find a flaw in his face. Warrant Officer Rei Minkai. At this time, the only person who can know the existence of Princess Esiram on this planet is probably beloved. However, Darzana's somewhat insinuating words caused Esiram to be dissatisfied. Captain Darzana, Sir Rei Minkai and Miss Euphemia are definitely not assassins. Your Highness Princess Ethelum, I definitely don't mean that. Esiram's strong reaction made Darzana a little surprised. For whatever reason, Darzana didn't want to offend Esiram too much, because at this moment, the lives of Darzana and the others were all entrusted to this battleship Deucalion that could be activated because of Esiram. Captain Darzana, if you don't mean that, then please forgive me for being presumptuous. Sir Rei Minkai and Miss Euphemia's innocence. I will guarantee it in the name of Esiram vis Iliosia. In this case, I don't know if Captain Darzana and Deputy Captain Hikari are satisfied. At this moment, the development of the situation was somewhat beyond Darzana's expectations. Whether it was Darzana, Hikari, or even Judo Koichiro, who had been silent and almost invisible, they were all very surprised by the strong reaction shown by Esiram. However, this also confirmed another conjecture in Darzana's heart. Perhaps Rei Minkai and Euphemia were the spies planted by the Weiss Empire on Earth, in order to save Ethelum Visser Illusia, who was in danger in her hour of need. Based on Ethelum's reaction at this moment, Darzana, who was constantly imagining things, finally gave up on pursuing the fact that Rei Minkai and Euphemia had concealed Ethelum's true identity. This was not only because of the belief in Esiram's guarantee, but also because at this time, the activation of the Aldnoah reactor of Deucalion was in the hands of Esiram. Maintaining a friendly relationship with the Martian princess was the guarantee for Darzana and the others to smoothly return to the headquarters of the Earth Alliance Army. Captain Darzana, I'm very sorry. Although I can't tell you what I know, please believe that my purpose is to stop this war. Looking at Darzana's expression change several times, Rei Minkai knew that this small storm caused by Esiram hiding her identity was finally over. How to stop it? After the matter was explained, Darzana's attitude was also relaxed. Since Ethelum had already made her promise, Darzana's vigilance also disappeared. As long as I can get in touch with the Weiss Empire, then when my grandfather learns that I'm still alive, the Weiss Emperor Regalia Weiss-Labas will immediately issue an order to stop this war. Esiram took a step forward and said her thoughts one by one. Get in touch. The current situation. Darzana sighed secretly, then looked at Rei Minkai. Warrant Officer Rei Minkai, was your initial idea to send Princess Esiram to the headquarters of the Earth Alliance Army? Indeed, Rei Minkai nodded. However, there was another sentence that Rei Minkai didn't say, but everyone present had already thought of it. Even if Esiram Weiss-Illusia could reach the headquarters of the Earth Alliance Army and get in touch with the Weiss Empire, she might not be able to stop this war. As soldiers who were far more sensitive to war than ordinary people, except for Esiram and the little maid Adelizo, the others didn't put all their hopes on this. No matter what, now we finally have a goal. At least it's better than flying in the sky, right? Captain Judo Koichiro, who had been silent, spoke out at this moment, but he also represented the hearts of Darzana and Kirunoboru. Indeed. Then, please advise us on the next journey. Your Highness Princess Ethelum. Yes. Please advise us. The storm finally passed. After leaving the captain's room, Ray Minkai and Euphemia returned to the room assigned to them. As soon as they entered the room, the white cat State Zero appeared from the shadows in the corner and looked at Ray Minkai with a smile. We almost capsized. Kai. Ray Minkai loosened his collar and smiled. It's okay. To be honest, I didn't expect Esiram to show such a big reaction. Euphemia, who walked to the chair and sat down, remembered the scene just now and couldn't help but sigh. UFFI. What did you say to Esiram before? It feels like she trusts you a lot. Recalling Esiram's attitude towards Euphemia, Ray Minkai felt a little incredulous. Carefully recalling the previous exchange, Euphemia shook her head. I'm not too sure. At this time, the white cat State Zero said, maybe that little girl has already felt, no, even seen through the true identity of Her Majesty. Impossible. How can it be? Ray Minkai and Euphemia suddenly exclaimed. The white cat State Zero smiled. Maybe. Even if the country called Weiss was only founded less than 30 years ago, don't forget that the little girl is at least a princess who has been educated by the royal family. With that said, the white cat State Zero gestured with its paws while looking at Euphemia. Your Majesty, do you still remember the royal education you experienced when you were a child? The white cat State Zero's reminder suddenly woke Euphemia up. Indeed. Although Euphemia tried to move closer to the behavior of ordinary people in her daily behavior, because of the royal education she received when she was a child, there would be a trace of strangeness in the details. Although this trace of strangeness was not a flaw, it was an obvious sign in the eyes of the observant. Come to think of it, we still underestimated this princess from Mars. Chapter 448. Although White Cat State Zero's words made some things clear, it was actually not a big deal. Even if Euphemia's identity was seen through by Ethelium, Ethelium would not think that Euphemia was the empress from another Earth. At most, she would guess that Euphemia was the empress from a country in the current world. In this point, I'm afraid that Ethelium would not be able to guess much. After all, among all the monarchies in the current world, there was no royal family with the surname Britannia. That's it. Although there may be some clues, it's not a bad thing overall. Ray Minkai shrugged and said indifferently. Although Ethelium's cleverness was unexpected, it would not have any impact on the next action. Even after everything was made clear, Ray Minkai and Euphemia's next actions would not be hindered. Then, I will continue to maintain a relationship with Ethelium. During this period of contact, I found that Ethelium's talent is still good. After Ray Minkai made a conclusion, Euphemia also expressed her thoughts. UFFI. It seems that you like Princess Ethelium very much. Feeling Euphemia's appreciation for Ethelium, Ray Minkai could not help but smile. Maybe. It's just that I don't think Ethelium's situation is very good now. There is no one around her that she can trust. Even that little maid. I'm afraid she can't do anything for her. Recalling the days when she first arrived in District 11, when she was regarded as a vase by many nobles, Euphemia suddenly felt that compared to Ethelium's current situation, it was nothing. As a princess, she was assassinated by an orbital knight who was loyal to the royal family. Later, her only relative in the world insisted that she was dead. Such an experience was not something that ordinary girls could bear. Looking at Euphemia's thoughtful face, Ray Minkai softly called his beloved highness. My lovely highness, are you trying to help the poor Princess Ethelium? Euphemia shook her head and looked up at the porthole. She looked at the increasingly gray sky outside and slowly said, That's right. No, let nature take its course. Although Ethelium looks weak, she is not a girl who would easily ask for help. Ethel. Just as Euphemia had said, she was a girl who was soft on the outside but tough on the inside. As the princess of the empire, she would not easily ask for help from others no matter what difficulties she encountered. Even if in the original timeline, there was Einafan, the first male lead who saw through her but didn't point it out and silently completed her dream for her, and Serene, the second male lead who sacrificed everything in order to stand proudly by her side, Aethelum Viscer Iliosia, had never revealed her true feelings from the beginning to the end. The fate of the royal family was really cruel, especially when only Athelum Weiss Iliosia was left in the entire Weiss royal family. The pressure of Mount Tai made Athelum dare not rashly take a step into the future. Kai, do you think Athelum will become a sacrifice? Obviously, Euphemia had already thought of the predicament that Athelum might face in the future with her identity as the Empress of the Empire in her vision. I'm afraid so. UFFI. As a member of the royal family, there are obligations that must be fulfilled no matter what. With that said, Ray Minkai held Euphemia's right hand and said softly, "We're lucky." Feeling the warmth transmitted to her, Euphemia nodded silently. Yes, as a member of the royal family, the prince naturally worked hard to ascend to the throne, and the princess, in order to maintain the stability of the royal family, married a noble who could bring great benefits to the royal family at the right time and contributed to the consolidation of the royal family's rule. To put it bluntly, the existence of the princess was just a sacrifice to maintain the royal family's rule. Now, Athelum Weiss Iliosia, who was alone and almost abandoned by her own country, was likely to embark on this path of no return. The sadness caused by Athelum's future did not last long. Ray Minkai and Euphemia's topic quickly shifted to the current situation. Kai, how's Fianna's situation? Euphemia knew about Fianna's plan and was one of the members who made the decision to execute it. Half an hour ago, the encrypted communication from Avalon has proved that Fianna has successfully entered the target's Yanglu city. State 0. Didn't you just receive a message from Avalon? Ray Minkai looked at the white cat that was napping on the table. Yes, the plan is going smoothly. There are no obstacles in Fianna's operation. At this point, the white cat State 0 laughed a few times in disdain. Are those guys who call themselves knights idiots? Just based on Fianna's words, they believe that the so-called descendant of Rayant is still alive. You can't say that. It's just that the goddess of luck is on our side. The reason why Fianna's operation was successful was because of Fermion and her Yanglu city. Most of the information about the Rayant family came from here. Therefore, Zasbarum, who had been blinded by hatred for 15 years, appeared in front of him again. The chain reaction was what Ray Minkai wanted to see. In the dark hall, Fianna stood alone in the same place, silently waiting for something. Other than the light cast from above, Fianna could not see anything else. Fianna knew that this was another test. It was a test from a lord that Zasbarum mentioned. Or perhaps it was an observation. Fianna stood quietly. For someone who had been on the battlefield for a long time, and even died for a while, this was nothing. As long as she waited quietly, the person hiding behind the scenes would eventually not be able to resist and jump out to meet her. Obviously, Fianna's patience was beyond the expectations of the person hiding behind the scenes. Clap, 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 clap. It was not loud, but very clear applause sounded in the darkness. At the same time, a delicate voice sounded. Sure enough, you are as powerful as Count Zasbarum said. Fianna von Rayant. The moment the voice fell, light descended, and the darkness dissipated. Behind the light, a girl in a wheelchair, wearing a gray dress, and with short purple hair was looking at Fianna with a smile. You are. The appearance of the girl in front of her made Fianna stunned. It was not that she did not know the girl in front of her, but the appearance of the girl in front of her was very similar to a certain person that Ray Minkai had specifically mentioned in all the information related to the orbital night. Pay attention to your attitude. Fianna von Rayant. Just as Fianna was looking at the purple-haired girl in front of her, Zasbarum's voice sounded. At the same time, the Count with a cane in his left hand walked out from the side of the hall and slowly walked towards the purple-haired girl until he stood beside her. Fianna von Rayant. This is the person who inherited the bloodline of the Weiser royal family. Remurina, Weiser, and Vina. Remurina, Weiser, and Vina. When Zasbarum told Fianna the purple-haired girl's name, Fianna's heart suddenly stirred. She once remembered that before the mission began, Ray Minkai, who gave her a lot of information about the orbital night, mentioned a sentence. Although I don't know if Remurina, Weiser, and Vina will appear in front of you, please remember, If this girl really appears in front of you, you must treat this girl's existence with great caution, because she is the symbol of impurity hidden behind the glorious image of the wiser royal family. Thinking of Rei Mingkai's words, a light flashed in Fianna's eyes, and she secretly said in her heart, "Is she an illegitimate child? No wonder the chief knight wants me to treat her with great caution." Thinking about it was just thinking, but Fianna still showed a surprised look. Wiser, but Fianna's surprise made Zasbrum nod his head slightly. "Yes, just as you thought. She is the bloodline of the wiser royal family that was left outside, and she is also the princess who receives my protection. Fianna von Rayet. You were able to pilot the Airy 2 before because of Princess Remurina's tolerance. Otherwise, do you think you can become the pilot of the knight's private plane with just your one-sided words?" This humble one is terrified. Fianna lowered her head, and the light in her eyes flickered nonstop. She didn't expect things to develop so smoothly, and the biggest reason for this was the royal illegitimate child, Remurina. "Raise your head, Fianna von Rayet. I am not in existence like my sister, so there is no need to be so courteous to me." Zasbrum's knocking stopped here, and Remurina, who had been silently sizing up Fianna for a long time, also spoke. "Yes. Your Highness Princess Remurina." Fianna's current performance was very much in line with Zasbrum's impression of Rayant's descendant. "Count Zasbrum, would it be possible for me to speak to Fianna von Ryan in private?" Remurina, who retracted her gaze from Fianna, looked at Zasbrum, who was standing beside her. Zasbrum didn't open his mouth to agree, and his expression didn't even relax a bit. Seeing this, Remurina already knew what Zasbrum meant. Although it was regretful, Remurina still accepted this reality. As the bloodline of the wiser royal family that was left outside, when Zasbrum found out about Remurina's existence, she lost her freedom and became a caged bird reared by Zasbrum. "Fianna von Rayet, can I directly call you by your name?" When Remurina, who had completely accepted her fate, looked at Fianna, her eyes flashed with the light of desire for knowledge. "Yes, Princess Remurina. It is my honor." Fianna responded in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. "Then, Fianna, I heard that you have lived on Earth for more than 10 years. Is that right?" "Yes. In order to find the whereabouts of Viscount Volin and Deucalion, my family did not hesitate to sacrifice everything in order to gain a foothold on Earth." Fianna's answer caused Zasbrum's gaze to waver slightly, and it also caused Remurina to reveal a trace of nostalgia. "The deeds of Viscount Volin are indeed a pity. It's just that at that time, I was still young, not even born yet. Otherwise, I would also want to meet this Viscount that Count Zasbrum praised endlessly. If Viscount Volin knew of Count Zasbrum's high opinion of her, I'm afraid she would also be smiling in the underworld." Fianna's words seemed gentle, but they heavily struck the last remaining trace of softness in Zasbrum's heart, causing Zasbrum to be slightly moved. "Your Highness Princess Remurina and Fianna von Rayet. There will be a ceremony in half an hour. Before that, your Highness can discuss in detail with Fianna von Rayet. Your subject still has some official business to attend to, so please allow me to take my leave first." Zasbrum's sudden departure caused Remurina to be surprised, but also made her secretly sigh in relief. "Is that so? Then I'll have to trouble you. Count Zasbrum, we'll meet later." "Yes, Fianna von Rayet. I'll leave Princess Remurina to you for the time being. In half an hour, you must go with Princess Remurina to the ceremony." Zasbrum said casually, then turned around and left. He didn't seem to have any intention of staying here. Looking at Zasbrum's departing figure, Remurina let out a sigh of relief and enthusiastically waved at Fianna. "Come over here. Fianna, I have some things I want to know from you." What Remurina wanted to know wasn't about the Weiss Empire, nor was it about how the Rayant family lurked on Earth and searched for the lost Deucalion. Instead, it was about everything on Earth, about the dazzling, splendid, and colorful things that existed on Earth. Animals, plants, and even the land covered in greenery, the land swallowed by deserts, and the land sealed in ice and snow from Earth's south pole to the south. Everything. Looking at Remurina, who was like a blank sheet of paper and had a strong thirst for knowledge about all kinds of colorful things, Fianna suddenly felt that this stray royal bloodline was probably bound by the curse called Aldnoa, just like Isirum Visser Iliosia. Your Highness Princess Remurina, this is a bird called a seagull. Its figure is healthy and beautiful, and the feathers on the lower part of its body are sparkling and white like snow. Moreover, their footprints are all over the world's continents. When the migration season comes every year, they will cross thousands of miles, cross the continent, and come to the warm climate in the south to breed. Cross thousands of miles, cross the entire continent. Fianna pointed at the picture of a seagull in front of Remurina and softly explained. The girl, whose legs couldn't move freely, secretly sighed. How envious! A free bird. Chapter 449. On an empty street, an orange mech held a 50mm submachine gun tightly with both hands as it walked along the street vigilantly, searching the area it was currently in. The faint light emitted by the surveillance screen shone on the expressionless face of World Catacomb Enathan. Its eyes were focused on the screen, ready to deal with any changes that might occur at any time. Enathan, it's safe here. It's just an electronic simulation. Why do you have to be so strict? At this moment, NetStory Yoon's voice sounded. Obviously, NetStory Yoon had some doubts about this electronic simulation that came out of nowhere. Understood. Yoon, it's considered combat mode now. You should call a code name. Mustana 22. World Catacomb Enathan ignored NetStory Yoon's complaints and directly pointed out NetStory Yoon's wrong attitude. Although this electronic simulation was an unexpected situation, World Catacomb Enathan had already expected it. As the saying goes, a new broom sweeps clean. Although the captain of Mustana's team, Ray Minkai, was already an acquaintance of World Catacomb Enathan and the others, in terms of piloting the mech in a battle, the cooperation between the two sides was only in the previous battle on Seed Island. This could not provide a comprehensive understanding of the combat level of both sides. Therefore, the existence of electronic simulation was necessary. NetStory Yoon was also aware of this. However, due to the nature of an adolescent girl, NetStory Yoon only complained a little. Little did she know that under this complaint, NetStory Yoon, who was in charge of searching another area, was attacked. The 50mm submachine gun's gunshots sounded instantly. Although the gunshots were simulated by an electronic program, it made World Catacomb Enathan tremble. Mustana 22. Yoon, watch your back. World Catacomb Enathan's warning was timely, but it was a step too late. As the images on the screen in front of him moved quickly, he saw the armored cavalry, Arion, that NetStory Yoon was piloted by NetStory Yoon. Its body was covered with bullet holes of various sizes. It turned into an electronic stream of light and disappeared in front of World Catacomb Enathan's eyes. Ugh! The red words "Game Over" flashed on the screen in front of her. NetStory Yoon, whose hand was still tightly holding both sides of the stick, showed a bitter smile. Is it over? So fast. Yoonzi, web writer Yoonzi's instant kill not only surprised web writer Yoonzi herself, but also World Burial fan. In the communication just now, Netbook Yoonzi had clearly reported that everything was safe, but in the next moment, she was killed by an attack that came out of nowhere. I was still too careless. Mustana 22, Mustana 33. The moment the Arion completely disappeared into the stream of electrons, another Arion locked onto by the fire control system of the World Tomb in Naysale flew out from the buildings on the left and landed lightly on the street. Mustana 11. This new Arion was undoubtedly piloted by Ray Minkai, the initiator of this electronic simulation battle. Mustana 22 was negligent in his defense. His results for this simulation are not up to standard. A dejected voice came from the other end of the line. This isn't fair. What followed was the indignant cry of Wang Wenyunzi. Objection rejected. If this was on the battlefield, Mustana 22, you would have died 100 times over. If you have any objections, tell them to your enemy. Unexpectedly, Rei Minkai's attitude was very strict. This made World Burial Inafan squint his eyes slightly. Our new captain isn't a nice guy, World Burial Inafan secretly said in his heart, and immediately took advantage of the fact that Arion's attention was not on him. He piloted Shrepner and turned around, disappearing into the shadows of the buildings. Good reaction. Rei Minkai had noticed Shrepner's actions from the beginning, but he deliberately wanted to see how World Burial Inafan would react next, so he did not immediately take action to pursue. World Burial Inafan remained silent, and was not swayed by Rei Minkai's praise at all. Other than the gunshots that eliminated web writer Yunzi, this virtual space created by electronic programs was once again shrouded in silence. Looking at the direction where Shrepner disappeared, the corners of Rei Minkai's mouth curled up slightly. He exerted force with his feet, and when Arion's stabilizer wings were put down, he jumped to the back of the buildings with Arion again under the push of the thrusters and disappeared. In the blink of an eye, the street became empty again. Is this a bait? Just as Rei Minkai was observing World Burial Inafan, who was the first to hide his whereabouts, was also observing Rei Minkai. Rei Minkai piloted Arion back to the back of the buildings again, which indeed surprised World Burial Inafan, but it was also within World Burial Inafan's expectations. Originally, according to World Burial Inafan's speculation, Rei Minkai, who had rich combat experience, should not use his full strength to deal with the two rookies, World Burial Inafan and Web Rider Yunzi. Therefore, it was very likely that he would use an unstoppable attack to defeat the two in one fell swoop, giving them a show of strength. However, in addition to eliminating Web Rider Yunzi with lightning speed, Rei Minkai's actions were actually cautious. Is he on guard against me? World Burial Inafan was very puzzled. Why would Rei Minkai, who could single-handedly take on the Mars Koras cavalrymen, be so wary of him? While thinking, the orange steel giant moved along the shadows of the buildings, trying to get closer to the direction where Arion disappeared. During this period, World Burial Inafan turned Shrepner's airborne radar to the maximum, trying to find Arion before he launched an attack. As Shrepner shuttled through the shadows of the buildings, World Burial Inafan became more and more focused. He knew that the attack would appear at some point in the next moment. Suddenly, gunshots rang out. The whistling bullets followed the shadows cast by the buildings and shrouded Shrepner under the barrage like a gust of wind. Behind, World Burial Inafan pulled with his left hand, and Shrepner's stabilizer wings were immediately lowered. At the same time, the thrusters on his legs were directly raised to the maximum output, forcing Shrepner to escape from the sudden barrage of bullets. Is this the move I used in the battle with Erui before? Looking at Shrepner's familiar drifting maneuver, Rei Minkai was a little surprised. As long as the output efficiency of the thrusters is calculated, these maneuvers can still be done. World Burial Inafan did not feel anything about reproducing the maneuver Rei Minkai used to fight against the Mars Koras cavalrymen. What's more, before this, World Burial Inafan, who had witnessed the entire battle between Rei Minkai and Fui with his own eyes, had already calculated some data on the spot. Now, he was just using the convenience of electronic simulation warfare to try to put the data he calculated into actual combat. I see. Ha ha. Mustana 33. No, World Burial Inafan. The title of top student is indeed well-deserved. Once in a blue moon. When Rei Minkai learned from the anime that World Burial Inafan's top student attribute was reproduced in front of him, other than being surprised, he was more carefree. He didn't mind that his skills were cracked and learned by World Burial Inafan through his powerful calculation ability and knowledge. Right now, Rei Minkai was more excited to see the prey. He wanted to see how strong World Burial Inafan's ability was. Top student? What's that? The title that came out of Rei Minkai's mouth made World Burial Inafan a little confused. No, it's just a title. You don't have to care. Now, your attention should be on the battle. Mustana 33. When the shadows dispersed by the 50mm submachine gun's fire gathered again, Arion turned around and disappeared from the back of the building complex again, disappearing from Shrepner's vision. Did he run away again? Ray Minkai's cautiousness made World Burial Einafan even more puzzled. Are you confused? Mustana 33. As if he saw through World Burial Inafan's confusion, Ray Minkai's voice sounded again in the communication channel. Yes, I'm confused. World Burial Einafan did not explain and straightforwardly admitted what he thought. At the same time, Shrepner also rushed out of the building complex under his control and rushed into the giant football field in the center of the building complex without any defense. At this moment, Shrepner was surrounded by the towering Gouda wall of the giant football field that separated the building complex from Shrepner. Here, the only way to attack Sleipnir was to use heavy firepower to blow up the walls of the giant football field or launch an attack from a high altitude to cover Sleipnir outside of the attack range. The only other way to attack Sleipnir was to stand on the field and fight it out with Sleipnir in an upright manner. Well done. Brother World Burial has an idea. Ray Minkai, World Burial Einafan, and Netsumoto Yunko were not the only ones participating in this electronic simulation battle. As spectators, Juhu Koichiro and Gaizuka Yuki stood in front of the computer next to Neku and watched the whole process of this simulation battle. And the sentence just now was said by Juhu Koichiro. Give up the cover and adopt the approach of fighting to the death with the enemy? What mess. Einafan. Unlike Juhu Koichiro, Gaizuka Yuki, as the sister, was extremely puzzled by World Burial Inafan's seemingly reckless approach. Warrant Officer World Burial. Brother World Burial's approach is understandable. Warrant Officer Lei's driving skills are obvious to everyone in the previous battle. As a newcomer, Brother World Burial will definitely be suppressed to varying degrees when facing Warrant Officer Lei, who is obviously a veteran on the battlefield. Yubei Koichiro touched his chin and slowly said what he was thinking. Instead of falling into a situation of failure under the gradual oppression of Warrant Officer Lei, it is better to give it a try. In this way, the purpose of the simulation battle is completed. It can't be. This is an Inafan's idea, right? Gaizuka Yuki was shocked by Juhu Koichiro's words. She, who grew up with World Burial Einafan, had never seen World Burial Einafan so reckless. No, Warrant Officer World Burial. This is indeed my current idea. However, World Burial Einafan, who was sitting in Sleipnir, did hear the conversation between Gaizuka Yuki and Juhu Koichiro and gave an affirmative response. Really? Mustana 33. Originally, I thought you would hold on for a while. At this moment, a black shadow flew to the top of the wall of the giant football field, and when it stepped on the high lampstand, it emptied the ammunition of the 50mm submachine gun in its hand. The gunshot that tore through the air not only surprised World Burial Einafan, but also shocked Netsune Yunko, Gaizuka Yuki, and Juhu Koichiro. How can it be? Juhu Koichiro was stunned, then raised his hand and patted his face, sighing, I didn't expect Warrant Officer Lei to be as reckless as Brother World Burial. If that's the case, is there a need to continue this simulation battle? Yes. At least, I know the level of the members of Mustana's team. Ray Minkai smiled slightly, and his right index finger pulled the trigger continuously. The Arion he was driving abandoned the 50mm submachine gun in its hand and replaced it with a tactical dagger. Mustana 33. Now, my Arion is left with a tactical dagger. You have to take my attack. As soon as he finished speaking, Arion's thrusters suddenly exploded, and together with the adjustment of the stabilizer wings, Arion was sent into the air. Then, he became thin and fell towards Sleipnir like a meteor in broad daylight. He did not dodge, nor did he panic. When Arion leaped into the air, World Burial Einafan did not hesitate to drive Sleipnir to raise its muzzle, lock on Arion, and shoot wildly. The whistling shells rushed out of the 50mm submachine gun's barrel and went straight for Arion, trying to shoot down Arion, who was still in the air. Ding, 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 ding. Strangely, the shells fired by Sleipnir were not his shells, but AP shells. In the face of this AP shell with powerful armor-piercing ability, Raiminkai's reaction was not hurried. He tried his best to protect Arion's hands in front of his chest, protecting his weak points as much as possible. Other than that, the rest of his body could only be shattered and sent flying by the impact of the AP shell, accompanied by bursts of sparks. However, although Arion was undoubtedly a target in the air, because Arion was falling too quickly, when Sleipnir's magazine was half empty, World Burial Einafan felt the tactical dagger in Arion's hand emitting a cold aura from the surveillance screen in front of him. Buzz! A black shadow fell from the sky, and the cold white light that followed took away World Burial Einafan's vision. In the next second, when the white light disappeared, World Burial Einafan found that the 50mm submachine gun in Sleipnir's hand had been cut in half. Moreover, the surveillance screen in front of him showed the sharp tactical dagger. Seeing this, World Mound Einafan slowly exhaled. I lost. Mustana 11. Chapter 450. Good job. This is what you should do for newcomers. After the simulation battle ended, Yubei Koichiro gave a thumbs up to Raimikai, who walked down from Arion. No, I just want to understand their technical level. From the results, it's almost expected. Raimikai waved his hand, indicating that it's nothing. Yubei Koichiro looked at Raimikai and found that he really didn't care about the victory of the simulation battle, so he didn't say anything. For a soldier, a temporary victory doesn't mean anything. It's just that Yubei Koichiro doesn't care about the victory of bullying the newcomers. How about it? Let's go out and get some fresh air. To be honest, I haven't been to the observation deck since I boarded this battleship. Yubei Koichiro looked back and glanced at the people who were in a circle and discussing the previous simulation battle, then casually suggested to Raimikai. Well, that's good. Unexpectedly, this was exactly what Raimikai wanted. From a moment he discovered Yubei Koichiro, Raimikai has been looking for an opportunity to get in touch with him, to understand Yubei Koichiro in front of him, and see if he really has the spiritual fluctuations that match the Lambda Drive system as he thought. So, in the discussion between Jietsuka Snow, Jietsuka Einafan, and others, Raimikai and Yubei Koichiro left Neku and went all the way up to the upper level of the observation deck. At this moment, the Deucalion had already left the sea area where the Seed Island was located and flew to the north, towards the colder northernmost sea. I didn't expect this battleship to fly so fast. This speed has far exceeded the speed of the original Poseidon. Yubei Koichiro looked at the sea that had become a little white outside and sighed, while reaching out his hand and groping in his pocket. In the shaking sound of the water, a bottle of liquor appeared in front of Raimikai. Do you want a sip? Yubei Koichiro's tone was very casual, and there seemed to be a trace of examination in his eyes. Raimikai lowered his gaze and looked at the amber liquid in the bottle with a faint smile. Then, he followed Juhu Koichiro and reached into his pocket. A palm-sized glass bottle filled with dark blue liquid appeared in front of Juhu Koichiro. Sometimes it's a good thing to try new flavors. Isn't that so? Juhu Koichiro was stunned. After a long while, he finally reacted. Ha! Warrant Officer Lei. I didn't expect you to be a kindred spirit. In the midst of the laughter, Yubei Koichiro put the bottle back into his pocket and rudely stretched out his hand to Raimikai, as if he was asking for something. Seeing this, Raimikai smiled slightly and handed the wine bottle in his hand to Juhu Koichiro. The name of this wine is Dread Oblivion. As soon as Raiminkai's words came out, Juhu Koichiro, who had just held the bottle, was shocked and almost let go of the bottle in his hand and let it fall to the ground. At the same time, the drunkard appearance that Juhu Koichiro showed before disappeared. He stared straight at Raiminkai's face, as if he wanted to see a clue from his face and even from his eyes. However, Juhu Koichiro's action was obviously in vain. Raimikai didn't do anything except for the words just now, and even his eyes were calm. Fear! Juhu Koichiro narrowed his eyes slightly, and his eyes subconsciously moved away from Rei Minkai's face and fell on the bottle with a deep blue luster under the light. Yes, he sank into fear. Since the birth of human beings in this world, they have been wrapped in all kinds of emotions. And with the development of history, there will always be some people who can integrate human emotions into other things and share them with others through these things. Rei Minkai flipped his left hand, and another bottle of fear. Human emotions? Juhu Koichiro muttered to himself. Although Rei Minkai didn't say anything, Juhu Koichiro always had a feeling. That was Rei Minkai knew about his terrible experience 15 years ago, and he also knew what kind of nightmare he had suffered since that incident. Hey, can an ordinary bottle of wine make people feel fear? Memories rolled in his mind, but Juhu Koichiro shook the bottle in his hand that was emitting a dreamy blue luster. Captain Juhu, you can try, but I don't think it's the time to drink. Rei Minkai flipped his left hand, and the blue bottle in his hand returned to his pocket. Looking at Rei Minkai's actions, Juhu Koichiro laughed. Hee, what's wrong with that? Puff. Juhu Koichiro stretched out his hand, and the cap of the bottle was opened. At the same time, Juhu Koichiro didn't wait for the fragrance of the wine to spread out, and he raised the bottle and took a sip. However, the moment the cold liquid slid down his throat, a bone-chilling feeling suddenly erupted from the inside of his body and spread to his limbs in the blink of an eye, and even rushed to his brain in the next second. At this moment, Juhu Koichiro's eyes seemed to be shrouded in darkness, and the figure that once terrified him appeared in front of him again. Ugh! In an instant, Juhu Koichiro's eyes widened, and his hands froze in place. He was no longer able to hold the bottle, and it slipped from his hand and fell straight to the ground. Fortunately, the moment the bottle was about to fall to the ground, a hand happened to catch it. Captain Juhu. When Rei Minkai caught the bottle, he looked at Juhu Koichiro's state. Fear. Fear. In addition to fear, there was only fear. Looking at the face that was extremely distorted because of fear, Rei Minkai couldn't help but secretly marvel at the great power of the wine in the bottle. This was not the wine that Rei Minkai brought out from the rebellious Lu Lucio world, but a supply item from the standard supply list sent by the administration when he set out to perform the mission. At that time, in addition to the name Fear Sink, there was only one sentence, the famous wine loved by the brave soldiers in the front line of resisting the abyss. Therefore, out of curiosity, Rei Minkai chose this so-called noun. Unexpectedly, the effect brought by this wine was somewhat unexpected. From Juhu Koichiro's stiff body and increasingly panicked face, the power of this bottle of wine was far more than that. While thinking, Juhu Koichiro suddenly screamed. Then, a muffled sound rang out, followed by rapid and somewhat tragic breathing sounds. Judo Koichiro, whose face was filled with panic, fell to the ground. His eyes also lost their focus and dissipated in all directions. The sweat on his forehead crazily emerged, like a waterfall from both sides of Juhu Koichiro's cheeks, both sides of his eyes, and even directly slipped into Juhu Koichiro's eyes. The sour and stinging feeling caused by the sweat slipping into his eyes made Juhu Koichiro's thoughts that stopped because of extreme fear move again. What the hell is this? Juhu Koichiro, whose face was frighteningly pale, raised his head and looked at Rei Minkai, and also looked at the blue bottle in his hand, as if he had seen a ghost. It's just an ordinary bottle of wine. Rei Minkai shrugged his shoulders and showed the bottle in his hand to Juhu Koichiro. When Juhu Koichiro saw the blue bottle, his eyes actually flinched, but soon he forced himself to be spirited, slowly raised his hand, and carefully took the blue bottle from Rei Minkai's hand. Ordinary wine. The coldness from the bottle made Juhu Koichiro's body tremble. But the strange thing was that the coldness that made Juhu Koichiro's body stiff just now disappeared. Phew. After a while, Juhu Koichiro let out a long breath. He didn't understand why the scene just now happened to him, and he also didn't understand why he could see that figure again with his own eyes. This wasn't a dream of returning to a nightmare. It wasn't a nightmare that had been haunting him for 15 years. It was a nightmare that reappeared in front of his eyes. Ha! Ha ha ha! This is ridiculous. It's just a bottle of wine. Why am I so embarrassed? The cold touch from the bottle made Juhu Koichiro's mind gradually clear. And at the same time, Ju Koichiro also made a dissatisfied self-mockery for his gaffe just now. Maybe you were tired. Captain Juhu. Rei Minkai didn't make fun of Juhu Koichiro because of this. Instead, he stretched out his right hand and signaled Juhu Koichiro to stand up. Is that so? Juhu Koichiro stretched out his hand, took Rei Minkai's right hand, and stood up again, but the bottle in his hand was still held in his hand. If Captain Juhu likes it, this bottle of wine is for you. Rei Minkai's eyes moved, and he made a generous gesture. Juhu Koichiro didn't immediately agree, but after looking at the bottle in his hand silently, he slowly nodded his head. Thank you. Silence came quietly at this moment. The scenery outside the observation deck was constantly moving back. The fog on the horizon was getting thicker and thicker. Warrant Officer Lei, can humans really be defeated by fear? In the silence, Juhu Koichiro suddenly asked this question. Rei Minkai smiled lightly. That depends on what you are afraid of. At the same time, Rei Minkai's eyes seemed to be unnoticeable, but Yubei Koichiro noticed that his eyes fell on the blue wine bottle. This action made Juhu Koichiro's right hand that was holding the bottle tightly. Let's call it day. Thank you for the wine. Warrant Officer Lei. Juhu Koichiro didn't seem to want to continue on this topic, because he knew that as long as this topic continued, they would inevitably talk about the tragic incident that year. This was not a scene that Juhu Koichiro wanted to see. Except for Dr. Yega Ayasu, Juhu Koichiro didn't intend to let others know about the scene 15 years ago. It's just before Juhu Koichiro took a few steps away, Rei Minkai's voice sounded. Captain Juhu, do you know? Sometimes, fear can also become your strength. As long as the time is right, even if Captain Juhu can't pull the trigger, fear will make the choice for you. Rei Minkai's words made Juhu Koichiro stop in his tracks. What are you talking about? Warrant Officer Lei, if you want to be a psychiatrist, I suggest that you learn a thing or two from Dr. Yehetsong Lai. His pale face turned red again. Yubei Koichiro raised the bottle in his hand and made a little joke at Rei Minkai. As a response to Rei Minkai, Rei Minkai shook his head and didn't care about Juhu Koichiro's reaction. As long as the time is right, Juhu Koichiro will know. From the contact just now, Juhu Koichiro really has a spiritual fluctuation that can match the lambda drive system. However, after boarding the body equipped with a lambda drive system, how much combat power will it exert can only be found in practice. Swish! The moment when Juhu Koichiro's right foot stepped out of the automatic door, Netsun Yunko rushed into the observation deck and almost hit Juhu Koichiro. Netsun Yunko, be careful, Juhu Koichiro scolded her. Netsun Yunko ignored Juhu Koichiro's scolding. Instead, she looked at Rei Minkai anxiously and shouted, Warrant Officer Lei, something bad happened. Miss Euphemia and her Royal Highness Princess Isilaram are being held hostage. Half an hour ago, when Euphemia, who came down from her duty, was about to go Neku to find Rei Minkai, she received an invitation from Isilaram. Euphemia, who had nothing to do, thought about it and agreed to Isilaram's invitation. Miss Euphemia, maybe this is a bit presumptuous, but I still have something to ask you. Athylam's attitude was very proper. She looked like a humble student who was seeking advice. Euphemia saw this and couldn't help but smile. Your Royal Highness Princess Isilaram, you don't have to call me by honorifics. If you can call me by my name directly. Correspondingly, I will also call you by your name directly. How about it? Euphemia's goodwill made Isilaram overjoyed. Yes, Euphemia. No, Euphemia. Well, that's good. So, Isilaram, what do you want to ask me? At this moment, in the aisle, in addition to Euphemia and Isilaram, there was only the little follower, Edelizo. Therefore, Isilaram could confidently ask Euphemia the question in her heart. For some reason, Isilaram always had a feeling that her question might be answered by Euphemia. Yes. Then, please forgive me for being presumptuous. Euphemia, if you want to realize something, or perhaps a wish, what do you want to do the most, or what do you want to prepare for? Although Isilaram didn't say it clearly, Euphemia had already seen what Isilaram was asking. A trustworthy person and a power that can affect the direction of the situation. During the conversation, Euphemia gradually walked in front, and Isilaram gradually fell behind, showing a humble attitude of listening. Isilaram, although you encountered an assassination, have you ever thought about why the other party could launch an assassination in the enemy's territory and launch an attack on the Earth Alliance army immediately after the assassination? Euphemia once again mentioned the assassination not long ago. It's manpower. It's a spy. Without me knowing, an orbital night arranged for people to lurk in the Earth, waiting for me to walk into the trap. Isilaram replied, well, then, why didn't you notice it in the first place? Moreover, before the assassination happened, you were unwell for a moment, so you managed to escape the disaster. Euphemia continued to guide. It's still manpower. Thinking of her status in the Weiss Empire, and then thinking of the scene when she came to Earth in Count Quotella's Yonglu city, Isilaram finally realized that she had no one else following her except for her little follower, Idalizo. In other words, except for the flashy title of the first princess of the Weiss Empire, there was no one else worthy of her trust. Just when Isilaram woke up, a violent impact suddenly hit Isilaram's back, making her fall heavily to the ground. Your Highness, be careful. In the severe pain, Isilaram only heard Idalizo's exclamation and Euphemia's warning. Then she fell into darkness. Chapter 451. The trajectory of fate would always inadvertently return to the original path. With the active activities of Ray Minkai and Euphemia, Rai still resented Ethellam for delaying the disclosure of her identity. Especially after boarding the battleship Deucalion, the unsociable Lay, who was always alone and unsociable, kept to herself when no one paid attention to her. The memory of her yearning for Weiser and her eagerness to perform meritorious deeds so that she could return to the scene where Weiser's father was killed by Talland was like the darkness of the deep sea, constantly squeezing her mind. That is, until Lei accidentally overheard the conversation between Euphemia and Ethellam. Assassination. This word stabbed deeply into Rai's heart like a sharp knife. It was precisely because of this phrase that her father paid a huge price. He didn't hesitate to lurk on Earth in order to complete the righteousness of those high and mighty orbital knights, who claimed to be the superior race of Martians. In the end, he was killed by a Mars knight. It's all because of you. It's all because of you. Resentment at this moment burned Rai like the fire of purgatory. The pain of watching her family being killed drove Rai to take out a fruit knife from her pocket. Rai, who was extremely distrustful of the people around her and lacked a sense of security, took this out from the kitchen when no one was paying attention. The sharp blade reflected Lei's eyes that were filled with hatred. When the hatred in his eyes reached a certain peak, Lei's figure suddenly flashed. Taking advantage of the fact that Aetherum was one step behind Euphemia, Lei quickly pounced forward. The cold blade cut through the air and also tore apart the scream of Idalizo, who was behind Ethellam. Your Highness, be careful. Idalizo's warning came quickly, but Rai's action was even faster. The blade flashed, and Ethellam fell to the ground. A crimson flower bloomed in the air. Your Highness, looking at the dazzling crimson flower, Idalizo's heart beat wildly, and his mind went blank. Idalizo, go check on Ethellam's situation. At this time, Euphemia's voice came, waking Idalizo from his daze. What? Idalizo, who was awake, moved his eyes and finally saw the location where the crimson flower bloomed, Euphemia's right hand. It turned out that the fruit knife that Rai used to stab Ethellam was caught by Euphemia the moment it was about to stab Ethellam. The sharp blade instantly pierced Euphemia's delicate hand, but it was tightly held. No matter how Rai struggled, she could not pull out the fruit knife from Euphemia's right hand. Why? Why stop me? Mars, all Martians should die. Don't you know? Riel struggled, tried to wrench her fruit knife out of Euphemia's hand. Rai Aryashu, this is your name. Am I right? Euphemia looked at the girl whose face was full of resentment and said her name. You. The girl was stunned when Euphemia said her name, and then the resentment on her face deepened. You are also a damned Martian. When the girl's hateful scream sounded, the wind suddenly blew. Euphemia frowned. She raised her right foot and pressed it down, pushing back Leon's whip kick that had suddenly been launched. Calm down. You can't solve the problem at all. On the other side, Idalizo had already run to Ethel Lamb, who was pushed to the other side by Euphemia at the critical moment and accidentally fell into a temporary coma. Your Highness, wake up, wake up. Under Edel Lizzo's anxious calls, Ethel Lamb gradually woke up. As soon as she opened her eyes, not only did she see Idalizo's anxious little face, but she also saw Euphemia in a deadlock with Rai. Moreover, Euphemia's right hand, which was bleeding nonstop, had deeply pierced into Ethel Lamb's eyes. That what's going on? Ethel Lamb shook her head and slowly stood up with the help of Idalizo. Ethel Lamb, you're awake. Don't worry, it's just a small matter. Euphemia noticed that Essie Lamb had woken up, and she explained the current situation to Essie Lamb. Unexpectedly, this casual answer deeply provoked Rai. Small matter? Nonsense. The power that erupted from the flames of resentment allowed Lai to snatch the fruit knife back from Euphemia's hand. Furthermore, the moment he pulled out the fruit knife, the sharp blade left a deep gash on Euphemia's right hand, so deep that her bones could be seen. Ugh! The piercing pain made Euphemia frown deeply, and a trace of paleness appeared on her rosy little face. Die! Damn Martians! The liberated fruit knife was waved crazily by Rai and went straight to the enemy in front of him. This time, not only Ethel Lamb, but even Euphemia was included in Rai's must-kill list. Be careful, Euphemia, Ethel Lamb exclaimed, but she found a figure rushing out from behind her like the wind. The moment the blade was about to stab Euphemia, the figure blocked in front of Euphemia. Bang! The bloody blade flashed, and the fruit knife stained with Euphemia's blood was sent flying high into the air, hitting the ceiling, and then fell weakly to the ground in front of Rai, who was pressed against the cold floor. UFFI, are you okay? It turned out that the figure who rushed out from behind Ethel Lamb was Ray Minkai, who rushed over after hearing the news. Ray Minkai, who arrived in time, knocked away the fruit knife in Rai's hand, and then pressed Rai to the ground with overwhelming force. I'm fine. It's just a little flesh wound. Euphemia shook her head, but quietly hid her right hand, which was cut by the blade, and left a deep wound behind her back. However, how could Euphemia's little move be hidden from Ray Minkai? Captain Juhu, leave Rai Aryashu to me. I'm going to treat Euphemia's wound now. Ray Minkai's gaze condensed, but he didn't expose Euphemia's little move in front of him. Instead, he looked at Juhu Koichiro, who had just rushed over and was panting heavily. What's going on? Obviously, Juhu Koichiro, whose running speed was far inferior to Ray Minkai, still didn't understand the situation. He just looked at Rai, who was controlled by Ray Minkai, with some confusion. Captain Juhu, that person wanted to assassinate Princess Islam just now. At this time, Adelizo, who was supporting Ethel Lamb, said something that made Juhu Koichiro's hair stand on end. What? Assassinate Princess Ethel Lamb? Shocked, Juhu Koichiro still took over the job of detaining Rai according to Ray Minkai's words. I'll tell you the details later. Now I have to treat UFFI's injury. Ray Minkai's mind was now full of Euphemia's right hand injury, and he didn't pay attention to the existence of Rai Aryashu at all. Looking at Ray Minkai, who pulled Euphemia straight to the medical room without any explanation, Juhu Koichiro couldn't help but reveal a wry smile. Your Royal Highness Princess Islam, could you please inform the bridge? I'm afraid what will happen next is not something we can decide. Ethel Lamb looked at Juhu Koichiro, and then looked at Rai, who was pressed on the floor, but still looked at her resentfully and nodded silently. This was the first time Ethellam met the assassin. As for how Darzana and others would deal with this matter after knowing the news, Ray Minkai didn't know, and he didn't want to know. The only thing he wanted to do now was to quickly treat the wound on Euphemia's right hand. For this reason, after Ray Minkai opened the door of the medical room, he frantically rummaged through the cabinets, ignoring Juhu Koichiro, who was standing next to him and scratching his head. Looking at Lei Minkai, who was rummaging around, Yehatsong Rajan turned around and glanced at Euphemia. He immediately understood what was going on. Well, young people, there will be a time like this. As a professional, Juhu Koichiro had a rough idea of what was going on. Warrant Officer Rai, the disinfectant is in the upper left cabinet, and the trauma medicine is in the cabinet below the disinfectant. The corners of Yehatsong Lai's mouth curled up slightly. He had a knowing smile on his face. He took out a sanitary pad from the first aid kit beside the table and handed it to Euphemia. After that, he turned around and left the infirmary. Now, use this to clean the wound and stop the bleeding. As for the rest, I think Warrant Officer Rai will know what to do. Euphemia blinked, looked at the tampon in her hand, and her face was a little red. Found it. UFFI, sit down. Ray Minkai, who found the disinfectant and trauma medicine, pulled Euphemia to sit down and unceremoniously opened a bottle of alcohol and poured it on Euphemia's right hand. However, the moment the alcohol touched the wound on Euphemia's hand, Ray Minkai saw that Euphemia's little face instantly became extremely pale and her eyebrows were deeply wrinkled, as if she was enduring great pain. Ray Minkai paused, then immediately put down the alcohol, picked up a pair of tweezers, picked up a ball of cotton, dipped it in alcohol, and carefully disinfected Euphemia's wound. Sorry, UFFI, I was anxious. Are you better now? Ray Minkai used the cotton dipped in alcohol to clean the wound while paying attention to Euphemia's reaction. He was afraid that the scene that made Euphemia feel pain would happen again. Yes, it's better now. It's okay. Kai. Euphemia shook her head, indicating that it was not a big deal. Sigh. Lei Minkai secretly sighed, but the movements of his hands became even gentler. Because of his negligence, he did not expect that Euphemia would be injured, although this was not a fatal injury. But as the Empress of the Empire, Euphemia was injured because of the attack, and as the Knight Protector, Ray Minkai himself had made a mistake. It's my negligence. UFFI. After careful cleaning, the wound on Euphemia's right hand finally stopped bleeding, and Ray Minkai could faintly see a trace of white in the depths of the wound. Leon was actually so ruthless. If that fruit knife had directly pierced Euphemia's body, perhaps Euphemia would not be sitting on the chair, letting Ray Minkai clean her wound, but lying on the operating table. No, Kai. Actually, this is also my negligence. It's rare that you reminded me at the beginning, but I still inadvertently ignored the existence of Leon Ariashu, which led to this incident. Euphemia shook her head. She didn't agree with Lei Minkai's decision to take the blame on her. Ray Minkai was silent. The tweezers and cotton in his hands were replaced with medicinal powder for treating external injuries. However, just as Ray Minkai was preparing to carefully pour the medicinal powder evenly on Euphemia's wound, a voice that spoiled the mood sounded. Hey, Kai, are you really going to pour the contents of the bottle on Your Majesty's hand? In the next second, the figure of White Cat, State Zero, jumped out from the top of the cabinet at the side and landed steadily beside Ray Minkai and Euphemia. State Zero. Ray Minkai frowned, looking somewhat unhappy. What are you talking about? If you don't bandage it, how can this wound heal? For some reason, looking at Ray Minkai's matter-of-fact expression, White Cat State Zero actually raised its right paw and covered its face like a human. I say, Kai, are you really stupid? Or are you pretending to be stupid? Are the potions in your storage space fake? Why do you still want to apply this unmixed medicinal powder on Euphemia? Speechless silence shrouded Ray Minkai and Euphemia's heads on the spot. Whether it was Ray Minkai or Euphemia, The two of them did not remember that they had medicine that could instantly heal any wound. Until after Euphemia's wound was cleaned, the late White Cat State Zero pointed out everything when Ray Minkai applied the medicinal powder on Euphemia's wound. Ray Minkai looked at Euphemia and found that Euphemia's little face was already blushing at the moment. Where did I put it before? Under White Cat State Zero's half-smiling gaze, Ray Minkai took out the medicine that he had forgotten in the storage space and carefully poured it on Euphemia's wound. As the light green medicine slowly flowed over the wound, a faint white wound could be seen quietly closing up. When the medicine completely erased the wound, the delicate skin once again reappeared. How do you feel? Looking at the healed wound, Ray Minkai put away the medicine and asked softly, It's cold. It's no longer a big problem. Euphemia moved her right hand and nodded with a smile. That's good. UFFI. However, White Cat State Zero's dampening voice sounded again. I say, what about that little girl? Kai, do you want to get rid of her? Chapter 452. The assassination of Princess Ephilim shocked Darzana, Kaoru Nozomi, and the others. This was far more shocking than when Princess Ephilim appeared and activated the battleship Deucalion. In order to deal with this matter, Darzana gathered all the people related to Ray Minkai, Euphemia, Ephilim, and the others in the captain's room to discuss. In fact, from the very beginning, Darzana could have executed Lai Ariathu under the wartime management regulations. However, considering that the party who was attacked was not a member of the Earth Alliance Army, but Islam Visser Iliosia, who had a subtly different identity and position, Darzana finally decided to gather all the related parties and make a decision together. How to deal with that Lai Ariasu? In the end, this is also our dereliction of duty. Darzana sighed inwardly. She had never expected that the assassin would board the same warship as her. No, Captain, this should be my dereliction of duty. Jie Zhongxue, however, denied Darzana's self-blame. No, Jie Zhongxue Warrant Officer, this is not your dereliction of duty. It should be my dereliction of duty. Juhu Koichiro opened his mouth to deny Jie Zhongshue's statement. What do you want to do? Not only Darzana, even Kaoru Nozomi, Ephilim, and Adelizo, who gathered in the captain's room, were a little confused. Why are the two rushing to take the blame on themselves? In this regard, Ray Minkai, who already knew part of the truth, naturally guided them in the dark. Captain Juhu, Jie Zhongxue Warrant Officer, I heard that Lai Ariasu was rescued by you when you were fighting against the Mars Armored Cavalry. Hearing this, Jie Zhongxue nodded. Yes. At that time, when we were ordered to attack and stop the Mars Armored Cavalry that suddenly appeared in the city, we found that Lai Ariasu was being chased by the Mars Armored Cavalry. Yes. However, now that I think about it, maybe at that time it was a trick? Hearing Jie Tsuka Snow's words, Yubei Koichiro recalled the situation at that time. He realized that he did not hesitate to risk his life to attract the enemy's attention. And let Jie Tsuka Snow save the girl seem to be a spy who used self-injury to gain the enemy's confidence? No, I'm afraid that isn't the case. Warrant Officer Lei. No, perhaps I shouldn't be asking you this question. Darzana first denied Yubei Koichiro's speculation. Then, after glancing at Ray Minkai, she looked at her adjutant. It's gone. Before Princess Ephilim showed up and activated Deucalion. Did you think she would have survived the assassination attempt? No. The assassination attempt took place in full view of the public, especially when Princess Islam's double walked out of the overturned car. It was captured by the camera. In this case, let alone us, even the Martians who launched this assassination may not believe that Princess Ephilim can survive. Kaoru Noboru spoke of her own opinion, and even most people's opinion. After all, in the previous assassination incident, the scene of Princess Ephilim walking out of the car and being swallowed by a missile from the sky was witnessed by all humans who watched the live broadcast. This fact was only overturned when Esiram appeared and activated the battleship Deucalion in front of Darzana and the others. In other words, when the Earth Alliance army unanimously believed that Princess Ethelum had been assassinated, the Martians who launched the assassination attempt would inevitably make the same judgment. Otherwise, how could the Mars cavalrymen suddenly appear in New Lahara City and chase a defenseless girl? The Mars cavalryman was here to erase the existence of the assassin. In other words, the pursuit witnessed by Captain Yubei and Warrant Officer Jetsuka was just an internal conflict between the enemies. After Darzana combined the current clues, she finally came to the real answer. In this regard, Ray Minkai couldn't help but secretly praise in his heart. The facts were indeed, as Darzana said. Riai Aryashu himself was a survivor of the assassin gang. After witnessing his father being killed by Torland with his own eyes and being rescued by Jia Tsukayuki and Yubei Koichiro, he accidentally came to this battleship. In this case, I'm afraid we have no right to make a final decision on this issue. For some reason, Darzana looked at Ray Minkai and Euphemia. Ray Minkai's lips moved, but Euphemia pulled the corner of his shirt, preventing him from speaking. Ray Minkai, who originally wanted to speak and execute Riai Aryashu, chose to remain silent after seeing Euphemia's gaze. He gave the right to speak to Euphemia. Captain, as for the disposal of Riai Aryashu, we should probably give the right to Princess Ethelum. If Riai Aryashu is a Martian, then, as the Earth Alliance army, I'm afraid it's not appropriate for us to deal with this matter. In fact, Euphemia played a little trick on this issue. She kicked the problem to Ethelum because of the difference in nationality and put herself in the position of a third party. Although there were loopholes in Euphemia's statement, Darzana and others tacitly maintained a tacit agreement and quietly waited for Ethelum's statement. From the beginning of the discussion to now, Ethelum remained silent and waited for the final result to come out. However, under Euphemia's Tai Chi ball, Ethelum knew that she could no longer remain silent. Captain, Miss UFFI, and everyone, I hope to see Riai Aryashu again before we come to a decision. I want to talk to her. Why? Why do you have to kill me? Hearing this, everyone looked at Darzana in unison. Okay, however, we can only meet Riai Aryashu under the guarantee of safety. Darzana pondered for a moment and agreed to Ethelum's request. In any case, as long as they still relied on this battleship to send Deucalion to the headquarters of the Earth Alliance army, they would not offend Ethelum too much. Even if Princess Ethelum seemed to be easy to talk to. Thank you very much. The disturbance caused by the assassination of Riai Aryashu came to an end for the time being. However, Ray Minkai still had some opinions in his mind. Kai, are you angry? After leaving the captain's room and returning to their room, Euphemia looked at Lei Minkai's calm but faintly dissatisfied face and asked softly, "What's going on?" Ray Minkai did not answer. He just looked down and looked at Euphemia's right hand that was still wrapped in a bandage in order to hide the healed wound. As a night guardian, Ray Minkai wanted to eliminate all the dangerous factors that threatened Euphemia, even if Riai's extreme behavior was justified. Kai, this time, can you listen to my thoughts? Euphemia saw the heartache in Ray Minkai's eyes. However, Euphemia still had some thoughts about the girl, Riai Aryashu. Ray Minkai secretly sighed. Say it, my lovely highness. You know I won't refuse you. Euphemia couldn't help but smile at the familiar way of addressing her. This was the tacit understanding between the two. There is no one else around Ethelum. Even if she gets our help and stops the war in a short period of time, I'm afraid that later she will fall into a predestined ending. She will ascend the throne, and in order to consolidate the power of the royal family, she will choose to marry one of the many orbital knights. So, if possible, I hope that there will be people around Ethelum who are effectively loyal to her. For this reason, do you want to create an opportunity for Ethelum to be magnanimous, to influence Riai Aryashu, and make Riai Aryashu loyal to her? I don't think this will succeed. In Riai Aryashu's eyes, whether it is the orbital knight who killed her father, or Ethelum, who was the victim of the assassination, they are all just Martians. The only difference is that they should be killed, and they should not be killed. In terms of status and upbringing, Euphemia and Ethelum were so similar. They were so similar that after Euphemia and Ethel met, Ray Minkai always felt that Euphemia was secretly guiding and paying attention to Ethel. UFFI. Let's not talk about whether Ethel can influence Rai Arya Shu. Our current mission is not to change the fate of Princess Ethel. Before finding Mississippi Q and Mr. J, who are hidden in this world, our actions can't be too complicated. Euphemia nodded. Euphemia knew this clearly. Before Euphemia could explain her actions further, Lei Minkai continued, I'm not sure if you'll be able to do that. However, it is not enough to rely on Fianna alone. If possible, we may be able to win Princess Ethel over to our side. This is also one of the early-stage investments. With that, Lei Minkai chuckled. After all, Royd is now fascinated by the Aldnoah reactor in Fermion-Yanglu. If we can get Princess Ethel, who has the activation factor of Aldnoah, to stand on our side, I believe it will make Royd happy for a while. Ray Minkai seemed to be teasing Royd, who was fascinated by the Aldnoah reactor, but behind the words, there is some tolerance for Euphemia's willful request. Thank you, Kai. However, there will be no next time. Anyone who wants to hurt UFFI, I will make them regret living in this world. Yes, Kai. Under the dark steel dome, there were iron pillars that were 3 meters tall and lined up neatly on both sides. Above them were the lights that never went out and illuminated the vast hall. Under the lights, there were soldiers in the blue military uniform of the Mars Weiss Empire, and the red carpet that extended all the way to the depths of the hall. The Weiss soldiers stood upright with a serious expression, quietly waiting for the arrival of a certain moment. At this time, there was a movement in the depths of the red carpet. It was the sound of slightly messy footsteps, but there was also the sound of a staff that symbolized the control of Yanglu City and the power of a separatist party. Welcome, Your Highness Princess Remurina. Welcome, Count Zasbrum. The moment the high-pitched voice sounded, all the Weiss soldiers standing in the hall turned around in unison and half knelt on the ground. They respectfully greeted the 2 figures that walked to the end of the red carpet and the high platform illuminated by several lights. The sound of the wheelchair moving gradually stopped, and Remurina's gaze fell on the Weiss soldiers kneeling on both sides of the red carpet. Then she looked away and looked at Zasbrum standing beside her. Count Zasbrum, I'm ready. You may begin. Yes, Your Highness Princess Remurina. Now, a ceremony began under the command of Princess Remurina. This was not a ceremony that could be made public. This was just an award ceremony held by Zasbrum, using his authority, and Remurina, Weiss and Weiss, the heir who did not exist in any records of the Weiss royal family. The award recipient was none other than Fianna, who brought back Deucalion piloted by the late Count Verlaine not long ago. Although Deucalion had become useless for Zasbrum, it still had a different meaning. For this reason, Zasbrum did not mind using his authority to provide Fianna with a reward. For example, the real Aldnoah activation factor. Perhaps it was out of guilt for the surname Rayant, or perhaps it was out of remembrance for the late Viscount Verlaine. Now, Zasbrum decided to let Princess Remurina give Fianna the activation factor, and at the same time, let Fianna swear allegiance to Remurina. Pass. Fianna von Rayant. Memories of the past flashed in his mind. But with the appearance of Fianna, he gradually recovered the memories related to Count Verlaine. Zasbrum raised his right hand and ordered loudly, Pass. Fianna von Rayant. Pass. Fianna von Rayant. The repeated voices of the soldiers kept echoing in the hall until the sound of the steel door that isolated the hall from the outside world opened. Click. Rumble. The heavy steel door slowly moved. A pretty but heroic figure stepped on the red carpet step by step and walked to the front of the high platform. Then, she knelt down and shouted respectfully, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. Fianna von Rayant. Greetings to Her Royal Highness Princess Remurina Visser in Weather. Count Zasbrum. Rise. Fianna von Rayant. Remurina nodded and said, That's right. Now, in the name of the person who continues the bloodline of Visser, I ask you, Do you, Fianna von Rayant, swear allegiance to the person you see in front of you? Fianna's posture was straight, and her eyes were firm and clear. She replied, Yes, I, Fianna von Rayant, will serve Her Royal Highness Princess Remurina Visser in Weather as my master, and will be at her beck and call until the moment of my death. Fianna's oath made a light flash in Remurina's eyes. If it weren't for Zasbrum standing beside her, Remurina probably wouldn't have been able to control herself and reveal a smile from the bottom of her heart. In the name of the person who inherits the bloodline of Visser, I acknowledge you. Fianna von Rayant, come up. Come to my side and become my knight. Chapter 453. The knight's conferring ceremony ended quickly. After Fianna received the symbol of a knight from Remurina's hands, a brooch with a pure white feather surrounded by a ring, the private conferring ceremony came to an end. Fianna, I really like the story you told me about the seagulls. That's why I took the initiative to make the symbol representing the activation factor look like this. Remurina looked at the brooch on Fianna's collar and revealed a satisfied smile. Clearly, she liked the design of the brooch and was even satisfied with her own decision. To be able to satisfy your highness, I am truly honored. Even though she said the same flattering words as everyone else, Fianna's attitude didn't change much. This made Remurina nod inwardly. Count Zasbrum, I want to go back and rest now. Will Fianna still be in charge of tomorrow's classes? Knowing that Zasbrum would definitely have other matters to discuss with Fianna after the ceremony, Remurina showed that she was already tired. Yes, Your Highness Princess Remurina, I will immediately arrange for Your Highness to rest. Of course, tomorrow's classes will still be in charge of Fianna von Rayant. To be liked by Your Highness is not only Fianna von Rayant's honor, but also the entire Rayant family's honor. After Zasbrum had his subordinates send Remurina back and dismiss everyone, he stood on the high platform and looked down at Fianna from above. Fianna von Rayant, congratulations! Even though this is a late honor, the Rayant family still managed to seize this moment at a crucial moment. From now on, you will be the successor of Viscount Volin. With Viscount Volin as your goal, you will revive the glory of the Rayant family. Yes, as you command. Zasbrum, I will revive the Rayant family. Her long black hair gently scattered and covered Fianna's face, but Zasbrum could hear the resolute determination in her voice. Come with me. As a knight, how can I not have a precious steed? Zasbrum said softly as he walked down the stairs and passed by Fianna. As a new knight, Fianna had to have her own body. Although from the data obtained from the Aerie 2, Fianna's driving ability was very good, and she could even be compared to Earl Volley 15 years ago, Zasbrum still felt that the Aerie 2 was not the most suitable body for Fianna. After all, Aerie 2 didn't exist as a standalone machine. Instead, it served as a support plane for Zasbrum's personal plane, Diogenes. Diogenes. This was Zasbrum's trump card. It was also the trump card that allowed him to stand above the other orbital knight. The most praiseworthy thing about it was that it had the ability of multiple Aldnoah reactors, and it was a powerful body that had integrated the technology of multiple Mars Knight bodies. And Aerie 2 was one of the components that formed this trump card. Therefore, Zasbrum had no intention of handing Aerie 2 over to Fianna, no matter how he looked at it. Zasbrum and Fianna, one in front and one behind, passed through the quiet corridor and came to a huge space where the unique noise of machinery operating could be heard. At the entrance of this huge space, a figure was quietly guarding it. Serene Troyat. Seeing the figure, the name flashed in Fianna's mind. She thought that after sending her to Yonglu City, the young man would only stay in Yonglu City for one night, then return to Kaludio, but she didn't expect to see him at this moment. From his expression, it seemed that he had been waiting here for a while. Serene Troyat, what's the situation? Zasbrum stopped in front of Serene and stared at the skinny young man. Yes, Count Zasbrum. The procedures have been completed. Count Kaludio also specifically told me to serve Count Zasbrum wholeheartedly. In response to Zasbrum's question, Serene bowed deeply and answered with respect. Yes. Zasbrum nodded slightly, then raised his cane and tapped on Serene's shoulder. Raise your head. Serene, although being here with me won't cause you any bad memories, you still have to keep your spirits up. Otherwise, what awaits you won't be a beating, but a direct fall into the abyss of death. Zasbrum's attitude wasn't good, but it was slightly better than Kaludio's. Moreover, even if the threat in his words increased, Serene still slowly let out a sigh of relief. I won't be troubled for no reason, right? Serene Chelit. It seems that from today onwards, you're a member of Count Zasbrum's subordinates. At this moment, a familiar voice sounded. Serene subconsciously turned around and saw the conspicuous feather brooch on the other party's collar. Although Serene had never seen this type of feather brooch, from the small words and patterns printed on the ring surrounding the feather, it must be a keepsake that only knights were qualified to wear, a keepsake that symbolized loyalty to the royal family. I'm very sorry. I was reckless. I didn't mean to offend you. In an instant, Serene, who had been struggling to survive alone in the Weiss royal palace since his father's death, immediately reacted instinctively. That appearance made Zasbrum frown secretly. No, raise your head. Serene Chelit. In the end, you and I could be considered half of the same hometown. Hearing this, Serene subconsciously raised his head. The next moment, Serene's eyes were full of astonishment. I'm Fianna von Rain. As you can see, I've become a Knight of Mars, and I'm also a member of the Knight under Zasbrum. Fianna's attitude was very friendly, making Serene, who was bullied by the people around him all day, feel a little relaxed. No, Fianna. In fact, the current Fianna von Rain is not a member of the Knight under me, Zasbrum. Fianna von Rayant is only serving me, Count Zasbrum, for the time being. I believe that in the near future, the name of Rain will return to the glory of Viscount Volin. Hearing Fianna admit that she was one of his subordinates, Zasbrum immediately refuted Fianna. Yes, Count Zasbrum, everything will be as you wish. Fianna did not argue, nor did she refute, but obediently agreed to Count Zasbrum's words. Okay, let's talk less. Fianna, from today onwards, Serene will be your navigator. Zasbrum raised his hand, and after casually making arrangements for Serene, he continued, Serene, that's all for today. Go back and rest first. Yes, Count Zasbrum, Lord Rain, please forgive me for taking my leave. The young Earth boy who broke free from the abyss on Count Kaludio's side did not know that Zasbrum had been sizing him up. He just turned around and walked toward the room that had been arranged for him. Until Serene's figure disappeared into the depths of the passage, Zasbrum secretly sighed. Fianna, Serene Troyat, pay more attention in the future. Fianna revealed a hint of surprise. Count Zasbrum, what do you mean? Zasbrum silently turned around, and before stepping into the noisy space full of mechanical operations, he said faintly, Serene Troyat, that's the son of my savior, Dr. Troyat. I brought him out of Kaludio's Yonglu City to repay Dr. Troyat for saving me from the desperate situation of death. Fianna was silent for a moment, then asked, Count Zasbrum, why are you telling me this? Count Zasbrum asked with a chuckle. Why? Is it because of Rain? Haha, maybe. In the midst of Count Zasbrum's laughter, the two had already walked into the huge space filled with the sound of mechanical operations. As they walked in, the first thing that entered Fianna's eyes was a dilapidated but extremely familiar body wreckage. Deucalion. Fianna softly called out the name of the wreckage in front of her. Yes, this is Deucalion. Zasbrum's gaze gradually turned cold. He didn't expect his fiancée's Deucalion to be so dilapidated. More importantly, Deucalion's Aldnoah reactor had disappeared. This made Zasbrum even angrier. Fianna, when you found Deucalion, were there other things hidden under Seed Island? Zasbrum stopped in front of Deucalion and asked Fianna about Deucalion without looking back. Yes, in addition to Deucalion, there was a huge dry dock and a huge battleship parked on it. Fianna's answer was very straightforward. She didn't have the slightest intention of covering up Deucalion's battleship. A huge battleship? Zasbrum sneered a few times. I'm afraid Deucalion's all-Noah reactor was already installed on that battleship. The abacus of the Earthlings is really very bright. Fianna was silent, but Zasbrum seemed to want to continue asking about the battleship. Fianna, when you retreated with Deucalion, was the battleship still in the dry dock? Facing this question, Fianna was silent for a moment, then slowly said, "No, Count Zasbrum. Before we left, the battleship seemed to have been activated." Activated? Fianna's words made Zasbrum's pupils suddenly shrink, but then he showed a clear smile. "Is that so? It seems that we were careless." The cold smile hung on Zasbrum's face, not fading at all. "Fianna, sorry. It seems that when I gave you a gift to congratulate you on becoming a knight, you have to make a choice. This might be a multiple-choice question, but for Fianna, there was only one answer in front of her. No, Count Zasbrum. As the last member of the Rant family, there has never been a multiple-choice question in front of me. There's only one answer in front of me." Fianna's voice was firm. "Count Zasbrum, I know what you mean. There's only one reason why the battleship can be activated, and that is because Princess Islam, who should have died in the assassination, is still alive and well. With the help of the battleship, she is still on the run." Fianna's action of pointing out the existence of Islam Visceralugia without any reservation made Zasbrum's heart flash with a trace of surprise. He didn't think that Fianna would point out this matter at this time and on this occasion. She also expressed her position on the assassination. "Fianna von Rant, you really have a talent that surprises even me. It seems that the Rant family will regain its glory in your hands." Zasbrum nodded and raised his hand to signal the surroundings. Boom! The roar of gears operating sounded, and the remains of Deucalion in front of Zasbrum and Fianna slowly moved to the right, revealing the space covered by it. "Fianna, look, this is a congratulatory gift to congratulate you on becoming a knight. A brand new airframe with 2 all-Noah reactors as the power output. Yaswetel. Yaswetel. The airframe with smooth lines, slender and beautiful shape, from top to bottom, neatly arranged 6 pupils, a plasma beam sword on each side of the waist, and a huge folded wing on the back appeared in front of Fianna. "Fianna, this is the airframe that was built for my dead fiancé, Viscount Volin, in the past 15 years. It's ridiculous to say it. Viscount Volin clearly died in the Ultra Space Gate incident, but I kept investing resources to complete the construction of this airframe. No, Count Zasbrum, this is not a laughing matter. If Viscount Volin could know the efforts Count Zasbrum had put in the past 15 years, she would definitely feel gratified." Fianna's words didn't make Zasbrum feel a trace of relief. On the contrary, the flower of hatred hidden in his heart quietly bloomed. It's useless to say this. However, Yaswetel will still get the chance to fight in the end. Fianna, from today onwards, this airframe is yours. I hope you can pilot it and become the backbone of our righteous cause. Yes, Count Zasbrum." Chapter 454. The vast and boundless ocean quietly retreated. What greeted warship Deucalion was the grayish-white horizon and the increasingly fierce cold wind. However, Deucalion's sturdy steel armor was enough to block the cold wind from the extreme north, protecting the humans inside the warship from the onslaught of the cold winds. Deucalion has left the coastline and is now heading to the Earth Alliance headquarters according to the original plan. The scheduled arrival time is 12 hours. The moment warship Deucalion left the coastline, Nozomi Keru announced the news that made everyone excited. From the moment the Orbital Knight launched the attack, this thrilling escape finally came to an end. As long as warship Deucalion smoothly arrived at the Earth Alliance headquarters, then all the problems would be solved. "We're finally here." Sitting in the command seat, Darzana secretly sighed in relief. But after arriving at the Earth Alliance headquarters, there was still a crucial problem to deal with. "Captain, are you thinking about this ship and Her Highness the Princess?" Unexpectedly, Nozomi Keru, who was sitting next to her, suddenly exposed Darzana's thoughts. Darzana was taken aback, Then she turned around and looked at her captain with an unfriendly gaze. Nozomi Kaoru, let me tell you why I'm not popular. A familiar scene played out again. Nozomi Kaoru retorted with familiarity. Isn't being considerate one of the factors that make people popular? Darzana retorted. You're not being considerate. You're prying into other people's privacy. Is that so? Nozomi Kaoru shrugged and then changed the topic. Captain, Princess Ethelum is now meeting with Rii Ariasu. And the result? Darzana wasn't surprised that Ethelum requested to meet with Rii Ariasu, but she wasn't optimistic about it. The self-proclaimed daughter of the assassin who launched the assassination didn't seem like a girl who could be moved by words. Simple words were not enough to convince the girl who was blinded by hatred. Not good. Rii Ariasu didn't pay attention to Princess Ethelum and remained silent from the beginning to the end. Kaoru's answer gave Darzana a feeling of sure enough. So Darzana stopped paying attention to this question and turned to the next one. It's gone. Do you think this is the end of the warship? She was silent for a moment, then shook her head. No, Captain. Perhaps from the moment this warship was activated, we were already branded with Deucalion symbol. The battleship, which was designed and manufactured using Martian technology, was finally abandoned because the Aldnoah reactor could not be started because of the Earth's joint efforts. However, under this ingenious and subtle opportunity, it had a chance to awaken. This was something that neither side could have imagined. Therefore, in the view of the Earth Alliance headquarters, this battleship activated because of Eziram Visceralugia might be as overwhelming as the Mars orbit night in this war. So, we have to be prepared to become cannon fodder. Darzana didn't say this out loud. Instead, she muttered it in her heart. At this moment, on the observation deck, Ray Minkai and Euphemia were standing in front of the window, looking at the endless ice field below. Is it the North Pole if we go further north? Euphemia raised her left hand and placed it on the cold glass, trying to feel the coldness of the earth. Across this barren ice field is the North Pole. The joint headquarters of this world is designed in the barren land of the extreme north. Ray Minkai glanced at the latitude and longitude of the battleship Deucalion and nodded. According to Ray Minkai's memory, this battleship had now reached the critical point of this war. After Deucalion arrived at the Earth Alliance headquarters, Eziram would announce to the outside world that she was still alive through the Earth Alliance headquarters broadcast system and call on all the Orbit Knight involved in attacking Earth to stop the attack. This plan was the result of Eziram's and Darzana's discussion. However, judging from the decisiveness and ruthlessness shown by the Orbital Knights after the assassination of Ithilum's appearance might not have the effect he imagined. It may even lead to an attack from the enemy. Kai, will the enemy come? Directly attack the Earth Alliance headquarters? Euphemia retracted her left hand from a glass and looked at the man standing next to her, but she didn't know what he was thinking. They will. When Fianna took away Deucalion, Count Zasbrum probably already knew about this battleship. After all, whether it is the Deucalion or the battleship, there are traces of Viscount Volin. He, who wants to avenge his fiancée, Viscount Volin, will never let go of this battleship using Deucalion's Aldnoah reactor. Based on his understanding of Count Zasbrum in the original work, Ray Minkai confirmed Zasbrum's next move. As long as Eziram's global broadcast was launched, Zasbrum's Yonglu City, which had been hanging outside the Earth's atmosphere, would inevitably fall toward the Earth Alliance headquarters, forcibly interrupting Eziram's global broadcast, and the news that Princess Eziram was dead would become a foregone conclusion. War is still unavoidable. Eziram's efforts were in vain in the end. Looking at the isolated and helpless Eziram's efforts to adhere to the path of peace, but in the end, it was all in vain, and Euphemia couldn't help but sigh. If it weren't for Euphemia's royal sister Cornelia, who was known as the Witch of the Empire, and Ray Minkai's help and support from the beginning, Eziram's efforts would have been in vain in the end. In fact, if Euphemia's fate didn't change, the result would be much more tragic than Eziram's. Not only were her ideals destroyed, but she even ended up dead. UFFI. I will always be by your side. Looking at Euphemia's emotional eyes, Rei Minkai knew what the Empress in front of him was thinking. The cold wind outside whistled from the extreme north and swept toward the south with a chilling aura. In the bursts of ice lifted by the wind, the battleship Deucalion, which crossed the ocean, finally arrived at the Earth Alliance headquarters. Looking at the flying battleship on the surveillance screen, everyone in the command center was amazed. No matter how rich their imagination was, they probably couldn't imagine that the power the Earth Alliance had always wanted would be obtained by such a coincidence. However, the general standing in the command center felt a sense of unease. Even though Princess Eziram, who might be able to stop this war, was on top of Deucalion, Deucalion's entry into the port went smoothly. As the heavy gate that isolated the underground space from the ground slowly closed, the thrilling escape from the landing ship to Poseidon and then to the battleship Deucalion finally came to an end. Under the guidance of the long-awaited soldiers of the Earth Alliance, the refugees who were shrouded in the dark clouds of war walked down from the battleship Deucalion in an orderly manner and walked toward the residential area used in advance to settle the refugees. Is it finally over? The smooth entry of the battleship Deucalion not only made the refugees feel relieved, but it also made Keiko Koichiro feel uncomfortable. Recalling the entire evacuation process, Keiko Koichiro found that he couldn't play any role at all. As a captain of the Earth Alliance Army, he could only do some work that could be done by civilian staff. Even if he sat on top of Arion, he couldn't do it. The nightmare of the bone gangrene would always break out in time when Keiko Koichiro sat in the cockpit of Arion. No matter how determined Keiko Koichiro was to face the nightmare, it didn't help. In the end, he sat in the cockpit and fell into a coma due to a mental breakdown. "Captain, are you here?" At this time, Rei Minkai's voice sounded. Keiko Koichiro looked back, but he first raised the bottle in his hand to greet Rei Minkai. "Fear Oblivion. It seems that Captain Keiko likes this wine very much." The blue bottle refracted the light, which surprised Rei Minkai. From a scene of Keiko Koichiro drinking the first sip of Fear Oblivion, Keiko Koichiro seemed to have a shadow of it. But now he was holding in his hand. But, judging from the quantity in the bottle, Keiko Koichiro was just holding it in his hand. "This is a good wine." Keiko Koichiro sighed. "It's so good that people don't dare to drink it again." "Warrant Officer, do you want to drink it?" "Of course." Rei Minkai smiled and reached out to take the Fear Oblivion from Keiko Koichiro's hand. When he was about to open it and take a sip, he was stopped by Keiko Koichiro. "No, Warrant Officer, I still can't let you drink this wine, although you gave it to me." Keiko Koichiro held Rei Minkai's hand and took the Fear Oblivion in his hand again. Seeing this, Rei Minkai suddenly spread out his hands, indicating that he didn't want to take the Fear Oblivion away. Then, Rei Minkai glanced at the Fear Oblivion that was tightly held in Keiko Koichiro's hand. "Captain, congratulations to you. I learned from Captain Darzana that the headquarters seems to have recognized the report you wrote back then. From now on, the infamy that you've been shouldering is gone." This news was undoubtedly great news in the eyes of ordinary people who bear infamy. But for Keiko Koichiro, it was not good news. "Really? That's really good news." His eyes were dull, without any unexpected emotion, and the subconscious twisting of the bottle cap meant that Keiko Koichiro's mind was not on this. However, when the blue liquid of Fear Oblivion was about to pour into Keiko Koichiro's mouth, his movement suddenly stopped. Is it because of Deucalion? Keiko Koichiro, who put the cap back on, showed a self-deprecating smile. If it weren't for the unexpected activation of the battleship Deucalion, the inside story of Tanegashima would continue to be blocked until the end of the war. But what's the use of this for me? Now I'm just a coward who will tremble and faint as long as I sit in the cockpit of Deucalion. The ridicule on Keiko Koichiro's mouth gradually deepened. Rei Minkai didn't speak, just stood aside, quietly listening to Keiko Koichiro's self-deprecating words. On the way, Yubei Koichiro wanted to lift the bottle and take a sip several times, but at the last moment, he fiercely stopped his action. Looking at Keiko Koichiro, who was struggling back and forth between drinking and not drinking, Ray Minkai couldn't help but sigh. Fear to oblivion. It's really a wine that people love and hate. Captain, I don't know if you've heard of saying. Ray Minkai's words made Keiko Koichiro's action of rubbing the bottle subconsciously. What's saying? Fear is also a way for human beings to gain power. Upon hearing Ray Minkai's words, Keiko Koichiro suddenly laughed. Warrant officer, this joke is not funny. Yes, overcoming fear is to face fear. I know this sentence. However, not everyone was able to do so. At least I can't. Ray Minkai stretched out his index finger and waved it. No, Captain Keiko, I don't mean to ask you to overcome fear, but to use fear. As long as you hold fear in your hand, you will get the power to get rid of the past. Keiko Koichiro didn't believe Ray Minkai's words at first, but when he saw the inexplicable certainty in Ray Minkai's eyes, he subconsciously refuted. How can that kind of thing be done? At least, a coward like me can't do it. Is that so? Perhaps, Captain Keiko, you need an opportunity. But when the opportunity comes, I hope that Captain Keiko can summon up the courage to seize this opportunity in your hands. Opportunity? Keiko Koichiro's heart moved. When he wanted to ask Ray Minkai, he found that Ray Minkai had turned and left. The speed of his departure made Keiko Koichiro's heart a little bit disappointed. From the scene of the conversation just now, wasn't Ray Minkai's posture the same as the posture of Yega Aoshi's psychotherapy? First, he put on the appearance of a psychiatrist, and then he mysteriously dropped a sentence. What does Warrant Officer Lei want to do? Keiko Koichiro raised his hand, and a touch of blue appeared under his eyes, and his movement stopped again. Hey, I don't care. It's fine if he's mysterious. He also told me not to drink. What the hell? Although he cursed to his heart's content, he held the blue wine bottle even tighter in his hand. Chapter 455, Battleship Deucalion. The core area where the Aldnoah reactor was located. Euphemia was standing in it, quietly looking at the faint light emitted by the Aldnoah reactor. This was the black technology left behind by the ancient civilization. After a long time, it once again emitted the light of civilization. Although the light was weak, it was so beautiful. It's really a good thing. Aldnoah. Euphemia withdrew her gaze from the Aldnoah reactor and turned to look at the two girls standing behind her, one tall and one short. Ethylum Visser Iliasia and Adelizo, who followed behind her all day. Once, the Visser royal family thought that the Aldnoah reactor could bring hope to the poor people of Visser. However, in the accident 15 years ago, this naive idea also collapsed with the disaster caused by the hyperspace gate. Until now, Visser has been unable to use this power inherited from the extinct ancient civilization to open up a new world that belongs to Visser. Ethylum looked at the pink woman standing in the center of the Aldnoah reactor and spoke her mind. Is that so? In my opinion, there is nothing wrong with relying on the power in your hands to open up a new world. However, in the process of mastering power, the result of excessive superstition must be clear to Ethylum. Euphemia took a few steps forward, stood in front of Ethylum, and looked at her. Yes, my father, the second emperor of Visser, Kerzelia, was overly superstitious about the power brought by Aldnoah. When he launched an attack on Earth, he was swallowed by the disaster caused by the hyperspace gate. Ethylum lowered her gaze, and her expression was a little sad. According to Ethylum's current age, when the second emperor of Visser, Kerzelia, died in the hyperspace gate, she was just a baby in swaddling clothes, and she had no memory of her biological father, Kerzelia. Let bygones be bygones. Now, what you have to do is to carry out your own ideas to the end, even if the result will disappoint you. To Ethylum's surprise, when Euphemia walked past her, she left these meaningful words. Wait, Miss Euphemia, are you saying that all my efforts will be in vain? Esilam quickly turned around and called out to Euphemia, who was standing at the door. Euphemia turned around with an encouraging smile on her face. If you don't do it, how will you know the result? Ethylum. Miss Euphemia, Euphemia's figure disappeared behind the automatic door. No matter how much Ethelium shouted, Euphemia didn't respond. Adalitzo, will my efforts, my wish, fail? She subconsciously took a few steps forward and stood where Euphemia stood before. She then asked Adalizo, who had been following behind her. No, Her Royal Highness will definitely succeed. Peace will definitely come, because this is something your Highness has always insisted on. There was no surprise. Even in the face of death, Adalizo, who had always followed behind him, always spoke words of encouragement. Really? Thank you. Adalizo, now it's almost time. In half an hour, the global broadcast for Ethelium would begin. Except for some people who remained cautious about Ethelium's global broadcast, the refugees who evacuated to the headquarters were more optimistic about this global broadcast. In their eyes, this war caused by the assassination of Princess Isilaram was bound to come to an end under the appeal of Princess Isilaram, who had come back from the dead. Therefore, the people who received food in the cafeteria all had a relaxed smile on their faces. Wangwen Yunzi, Nina, Gam, and the others were sitting around the dining table. They were playing poker cards that they had found in the cupboard while discussing what they wanted to do next. But Jiamount and Afin, who was sitting next to them, didn't join them. Instead, he sat quietly next to them and looked for something on his tablet. Suddenly, Jiamount and Afin, who felt something was wrong, looked up at the door of the cafeteria. That's Warrant Officer Lei? Under the gaze of Jiamount and Afin, the figure that flashed by the door of the cafeteria was Ray Minkai. Moreover, judging from Ray Minkai's actions, his destination seemed to be the battleship Deucalion that was replenishing its ammunition. Wenyanzi, Gammo, I'm going out for a while. Jiamount and Afin, who was puzzled, suddenly stood up, hurriedly said a sentence, and chased after Ray Minkai. Kai, that young man is following. As soon as Jiamount and Afin caught up, the white cat State Zero lying on Ray Minkai's shoulder yawned and reminded him. Yes, I got it. Let him follow me. According to Jiamount and Afin's personality, I'm afraid he has already found some clues. Ray Minkai didn't care about Jiamount and Afin's pursuit. Instead, he slowed down so that Jiamount and Afin could keep up with him. Warrant Officer Lei, are you going to Deucalion? As soon as Jiamount and Afin caught up, he asked directly. Yes, I want to check the situation of the body. Although there was nothing wrong with Ray Minkai's answer, Jiamount and Afin saw a hint of something. Warrant Officer Lei, do you think the war will continue? As soon as he opened his mouth, Jiamount and Afin directly hit a straight ball. What do you think, little brother Jiamount? Ray Minkai didn't give a clear answer. Instead, he kicked the question back to Jiamount and Afin. Jiamount and Afin was silent, but his footsteps still followed Ray Minkai closely. No. Suddenly, Jiamount and Afin mentioned the culprit that triggered the war between Weiss and Earth for many years. Oh, why do you say that? Lei Minkai stopped in his tracks and asked with interest. Jiamount and Afin's behavior at this moment had never appeared before. Even the top student in Afin in Ray Minkai's memory. World Mount and Afin looked left and right and slowly voiced his thoughts. Since the ancient civilization heritage Aldnoah was unearthed, the first Weiss Emperor, Regalia Weiss-Labas, became the successor of Aldnoah and established the Weiss Empire on Mars. Therefore, the members of the Weiss royal family after Regalia have the activation factor that can activate Aldnoah. This may be an opportunity for the rise of a huge empire. However, in the global disaster caused by the hyperspace door 15 years ago, the second emperor of the Weiss Empire, Kurzalia, died, causing the first emperor, Regalia, to come to power again. At the same time, the Weiss royal family fell into a dilemma with only 2 members left. With that said, Jiamount and Afin looked at Ray Minkai as if he wanted to see through Ray Minkai's thoughts at the moment. Maybe that's right. However, during this time, I found that the assassination that triggered this battlefield doesn't seem to be as simple as it seems. If there are only 2 members of the Weiss royal family left with the activation factor, why would the Orbital Knight assassinate Princess Isilaram in her youth? The current first emperor, Regalia, is already old. In the future, with the death of Regalia and Princess Ethelum, the foundation of the Weiss Empire, the Aldnoah reactor, would come to a standstill. I don't believe that the orbital knight didn't think of this. So, what do you think is the reason? The corners of Lei Mingkai's mouth curled up into an interested smile. Probably, there is another person in the hands of the orbital knight who has the activation factor to activate Aldnoah. Jiamao and Nathan's words suddenly made Rei Mingkai's gaze change. Where's the evidence? None. This is just my personal speculation. Jiamao and Nathan did not take out any evidence that could prove this speculation. Speculation? Yes. Throughout history, any member of the royal family has more or less cheated in private. Then, did the second Weiss emperor who stood on the moon and launched an attack on Earth in his prime make the same mistake? Looking at Jiamao and Nathan's serious face, Rei Mingkai suddenly felt like he was in the wrong place. This kind of topic clearly existed in the Gossip Weekly that specialized in publishing gossip, as well as in the mouths of women on the streets. But now, it came from Jiamao and Nathan, who was seriously speculating on the contradictions of the Orbital Knight's actions, which made Rei Mingkai a little uncomfortable. Why are you telling me this? Because I think you may have a clear answer. The answer to Rei Mingkai was Jiamao and Nathan's answer. Is that so? Rei Mingkai shook his head, then raised his hand and patted Jiamao and Nathan. Young man, go prepare. Maybe the battle is about to begin. In other words, I guessed right. Jiamao and Nathan raised his gaze and looked at Rei Mingkai. I didn't say anything. I just asked you to prepare to deal with emergencies. Rei Mingkai was very cunning. He did not answer Jiamao and Nathan's question. After casually responding, he turned and continued to head to the battleship Deucalion. Looking at Rei Mingkai's back, Jiamao and Nathan was very confused. Did I guess right? Half an hour later, Ethelum's global broadcast began. However, no matter how Ethelum proved his identity and called on all the Orbital Knight who participated in the attack on Earth to stop the war, it was useless. Zasbrum, who had already grasped the fact that Ethelum was still alive, showed a cold smile. He looked at Ethelum's righteous speech calling for the war to stop, then calmly raised his hand and waved. The long-awaited retainers immediately began the process of landing Yanglu City on the ground. It was time for Zasbrum's Yanglu City to fall from the sky and directly smash the head of the Earth Alliance headquarters. Then they would drag out the still naive Princess Ethelum and kill her. Princess Ethelum. She's still alive. As an Earthling, Serene might be an anomaly to Zasbrum's Yanglu City, especially since he was the only one who was kept in the dark from the beginning to the end. He did not know anything about Zasbarum's upcoming operation in Yanglu City, and even Zasbarum's actions. The people around him, whether intentionally or not, ostracized Serene even more clearly. Are you surprised? Serene. At this time, Fianna's cold voice sounded from behind Serene. Yes. I'm very surprised, but I'm also very happy. Serene, who turned around, was already in tears. Princess Ethelum is still alive. For you, this is good news, right? Fianna asked again. Yes. This was the best news he could get. Princess Ethelum is still alive. She's still alive. Because of Ethelum's global broadcast, he learned that the princess he admired was still alive. The emotional Serene did not notice that the people around him had quietly distanced themselves from him. Even the gazes around him had inadvertently changed from indifference to hatred. Fianna raised her gaze and looked at the projection screen in front of her, where Princess Ethelum was constantly calling for a truce. Now she's still alive, but next she's going to die. Serene Tylot. The coldness in Fianna's words made Serene's body tremble. The joy he had just learned that Princess Ethelum was still alive suddenly disappeared. What? This Yanglu City, these people, Zasbarum, and myself will all be part of the plan to kill Princess Ethelum. Serene, open your eyes and look around. The people standing here will not be like you, admiring Princess Ethelum. Fianna's indifference and the hostile gazes of the people around him made Serene take a few steps back. He looked at Fianna and the people around him in disbelief. You. The Earth youth who admired Princess Ethelum stretched out a trembling finger and pointed at Fianna and the people around him. Are you saying that you're the culprit behind the assassination of Princess Ethelum? A light flashed in front of his eyes, and a voice answered Serene's question. Yes, Serene Tylot. I originally wanted to confess to you after landing on Earth. But since you've already found out, then I won't hide anything anymore. Serene, the culprit behind the assassination of Princess Ethelum is me, Zasbrum. Also now, my Younglu city will directly land on Earth's joint headquarters and begin to hunt down Princess Ethelum. Zasbrum did not hide his purpose at all. He even had a determined look on his face. Impossible. You. Aren't you the Orbit Knight who swore allegiance to the Weiss royal family? Why do you still want to assassinate the princess? Why? You don't need to care about this. Men, take Serene Tylot away. Now, our righteousness will not allow anyone to stop us. You. With a sudden burst of courage that came from nowhere, Serene suddenly snatched away the pistol of the person closest to him before pointing it at the people around him. Don't come over, traitor. However, just as Serene raised the muzzle of his gun, a powerful force that made Serene's internal organs turn upside down suddenly hit Serene's abdomen with an unbearable pain. The moment the darkness invaded, Serene's gaze fell on Fianna's indifferent face. Serene Tylot, now, you are not qualified to be the knight who protects the princess. Chapter 456. Earth Alliance Headquarters. This huge military base built under the huge pressure from the Mars Weiss Empire finally welcomed its first real combat since its construction after Princess Isilaram's global broadcast. However, in the face of the meteorite attack launched by Yonglu City, even the thick rock walls and a powerful shell made of high-tech materials that could withstand the bombardment of nuclear bombs were still so powerless. The moment Zazram's Yonglu City tore through the sky and landed on the Earth Alliance headquarters, the Earth-penetrating missiles, which were specially designed for underground bunkers and had long been ready to fire, rose into the air on the spot. Amidst the smoke that tore through the cold wind, they rushed into the sky, then turned around and went straight down. The underground base hidden hundreds of meters underground. First floor, second floor, third floor. The bunker rock formation that the Earth Alliance headquarters had high hopes for was powerless in the face of the Earth-penetrating missiles launched by Yonglu City. It couldn't even meet the performance targets determined at the beginning of the design. The Earth-penetrating missiles could only cut through the defense line like melons and vegetables, until they broke through the rock formation and directly launched a bombardment on the underground base of the Earth Alliance headquarters. Boom! The moment the Earth-penetrating missiles broke through the rock formation, a burst of violent explosions exploded in the scattered sand and stones, swallowing the citizens and soldiers who couldn't escape in time. In an instant, the citizens who thought that they could finally wait for the end of the war in the underground base of the Earth Alliance headquarters suffered heavy casualties on the spot. The explosions that kept echoing in this underground space baptized the underground space again and again. It also made Isilaram, who survived the rubble, feel both angry and sad. Did I do something wrong? The white gauze dress was stained by the dust raised by the explosion, and her clean and beautiful hairstyle had become messy. In the previous global broadcast, her bright eyes also had a trace of uncertainty at this moment, especially when Isilaram saw the soldier of the Earth Alliance lying next to her, buried by the rubble collapsed by the explosion. A trace of unbearable pain appeared on her face. At the moment of the explosion, if the soldier hadn't appeared in time and pushed Isilaram away from the podium, the person buried in the rubble would have been Isilaram. Your Royal Highness. Idalizo, who stood on the side, was far less calm than Isilaram. Just looking at the soldier of the Earth Alliance who was instantly buried alive by the rubble and died tragically, she, who was only 12 years old, could hardly control her hands and feet. She could only force her trembling body to remind Isilaram of the current situation. Idalizo. Did I do something wrong? His ears were filled with the sounds of explosions that reverberated in the underground space, as well as screams of agony. There was no need to look, there was no need to think. Isilaram already knew what kind of situation her global broadcast had caused. No, Your Royal Highness Princess Isilaram did not do anything wrong. It's those bad guys. If it weren't for those bad guys, Weiss would have signed Weiss. Even though the petite Idalizo was very scared, she kept cheering for Isilaram. However, the involuntary trembling voice had already exposed Idalizo's current emotions. Is that so? Isilaram looked at the soldier of the Earth Alliance who was buried alive by the rubble and silently thanked him. Thank you. If it weren't for you, I might have died. Now, I will do what I should do. The moment this sentence sounded in Isilaram's heart, her white gauze dress that was stained with gravel moved, and Isilaram's voice passed into Idalizo's ears. Let's go. Idalizo. Now, we have more important things to do. We have to end this war. There were deafening explosions in the corridor leading to the dock, but Isilaram's eyes became more and more firm. Ms. Euphemia, could it be that you've seen through everything from the very beginning and predicted that all of this would happen? As her footsteps quickened, Isilaram couldn't help but recall the conversation with Euphemia before. At that time, Isilaram didn't find any clues. At this moment, when Zasbram dared to attack a member of the Weiss royal family, Isilaram finally understood what Euphemia wanted to convey to her at that time. Sure enough, am I too naive? Although Euphemia didn't say it clearly at that time, as long as Isilaram thought about it a little deeper, she would definitely understand. However, at that time, Isilaram only wanted to use her identity as the first princess of the Weiss Empire to stop the war. She never thought that the person who launched the assassination was probably hiding among the Orbital Knight who swore loyalty to the Weiss Emperor. Your Royal Highness, quick, come here. Idalizo, who was behind Isilaram, suddenly had a flash in his eyes, and he quickly pointed to the intersection not far away. A Hummer happened to be parked there. Judging from the half-open car door, the driver must have forgotten to close the car door when he was trying to escape from the attack. I'm counting on you. Idalizo. When Isilaram and Idalizo rushed to the dock at full speed to meet with the battleship Neku, Ray Minkai had already boarded his Arion and stood at the exit of Neku. Bridge. Open Neku. Let me go out to cover Deucalion's flight. As soon as Ray Minkai's communication was connected to the bridge, Darzana frowned on the spot. Isn't Ray Minkai's reaction too fast? When everyone was a little flustered by this surprise attack, Ray Minkai actually boarded Arion and made the next decision. With this thought in mind, Darzana looked up and looked at Euphemia, who had just returned to her post at CIC. From her expression, Euphemia must have made corresponding preparations for this surprise attack, just like Ray Minkai. It seems that I still underestimated you. Miss Euphemia, inform Mustana 11 to approve his request. Also, inform Mustana 11 to return to Deucalion as soon as possible under the premise of completing the cover mission. Understood. Euphemia nodded and then opened the communication with Ray Minkai. Mustana 11. Attack approved. Please note the return time. Mustana 11. Roger. Right? Captain, it's best to contact Princess Isilaram. Maybe she has a way to stop this battle. The moment the hatch opened, Ray Minkai gave a hint. Her Royal Highness has a way to stop this battle? Darzana was taken aback. Obviously, she didn't have time to think. Old Noah, Princess Isilaram has the ability to forcibly shut down the Old Noah reactor. This is the trump card of the Weiss royal family to balance the Orbit Knight. Euphemia softly explained Ray Minkai's plan. I see. Contact Princess Ethelum when she is gone. Perhaps, as Mustang 11 said, this battle still needs to be ended by Princess Isilaram. Roger. In the roar of the mechanical gears, Deucalion's hatch opened, but at the same time, it was greeted with a barrage of comments. It turned out that the moment the penetrating missile tore through the rock layer of the bunker, the landing force of Zasbram, Yonglu City, followed behind. Under the lead of the carrier aircraft, they landed in this underground base. Ding, 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 ding. The assault rifle equipped by the individual soldier couldn't penetrate the armor equipped by Arion. It only created bursts of sparks and meaningless clanks. Everyone else, hurry up and find cover. While Lei Mingkai's warning sounded, Arion also raised the 50mm submachine gun in his hand and fired at the Mars V soldiers hiding behind cover in an advantageous position. In an instant, the Weiss soldiers that created bursts of sparks on Arion's armor were met with Arion's counterattack. However, Arion's counterattack was 10 times more powerful than the Weiss soldiers. Da-da-da-da-da. The shell casings of the 50mm submachine gun were crazily thrown out of the casings. The heat bullets whistled as they pounced towards the bunker. With an incomparably tyrannical posture, they directly set off a series of explosions on the bunker. In this frenzied bombardment, no matter how well the bunker protected the Weiss soldiers, it couldn't fully resist the power of the 50mm submachine gun. Therefore, in less than a few seconds, when the 50mm submachine gun stopped firing, the Weiss soldiers in front of Arion had already suffered heavy casualties. Sorry, this is an asymmetrical battle. After taking care of the enemies in front of him, Arion jumped down from the battleship Deucalion and landed firmly on the ground. Boom! Suddenly, Lei Mingkai was alerted. He subconsciously pulled his right hand back, and Arion, who had just landed, suddenly leaned back and narrowly avoided the anti-armor missile that came from the right. He didn't secretly rejoice. The moment the anti-armor missile flew past him and hit the dome in vain, Lei Mingkai raised his right hand, and the 50mm submachine gun in his hand once again created a flower of death that was intertwined with blood and fire. Boom! At this moment, the anti-armor missile and 50mm submachine gun created an explosion of light, one up and one down. It was dazzling. In less than a few minutes, the Martian Weiss soldiers besieging the battleship Deucalion suffered great losses after the appearance of the Arion piloted by Lei Mingkai. This greatly impacted the morale of the surviving Martian Weiss soldiers. The anti-armor missile that could cause damage to the Iron Cavalry was unable to pose any threat to Arion. No matter how well the Weiss soldiers cooperated, they couldn't hit Arion that was protecting Deucalion. It was as if its body was full of eyes. No matter which blind spot the Weiss soldiers attacked from, Arion could easily avoid them. Then, the Martian Weiss soldiers were greeted by the death song played by the 50mm submachine gun. Area clearing completed. Safe. When a wisp of smoke slowly rose from the 50mm submachine gun's muzzle, the Weiss soldiers besieging the battleship Deucalion were all dead. Bridge. Have you contacted Princess Islam? After rechecking the surroundings and confirming that there were no survivors, Lei Mingkai asked the bridge again. I have contacted her. Princess Islam is now on her way. Understood. The wait didn't last long. When the roar of a motor came from afar, a Hummer appeared at the intersection monitored by Arion's electronic eyes. Deucalion, this is Islam. I have a plan. Please assist me in completing it. When the Hummer appeared, Esiram's voice was also transmitted to Deucalion's bridge. However, before Islam could say her plan, Darzana spoke first. Your Highness Princess Ethelum, if you're talking about using your own ability to forcibly shut down Old Noah, then this plan will be handed over to Deucalion to assist you in completing it. Darzana's unreserved agreement made Islam stunned for a moment. But in the next moment, Ethelum found out who had told Darzana about the plan in advance. Is it Warrant Officer Lei and Miss Euphemia? Did they already know that I would make such a decision from the beginning? Islam was once again surprised by Lei Mingkai and Euphemia's ability to predict the future. The process of recovering the Hummer and Deucalion went smoothly. Without the threat of the pursuers, the warship Deucalion took off without a hitch. However, the command center of this underground base still could not escape the fate of being captured by Mars V soldiers. Warship Deucalion once again used the main cannon to blast open the dome and rushed out of the underground base to begin the next step of the plan against Zasbrum's Yonglu City. Count Zasbrum, the ship is out. News of Deucalion's appearance quickly reached Zasbrum's ears as he led his team into the underground base. Is that so? Worship Deucalion. What ominous existence. Oof. Now, let me be buried with Princess Islam. Zasbrum glanced at the underground base that had been mostly suppressed by his side, then looked at the screen in front of him and looked at the face that he missed. Fianna. Attack. Before I return, delay the enemy's attack. I'm afraid that Princess Ethelum is aiming for the Aldnoah reactor in Yonglu City. Yes, Count Zasbrum. Chapter 457. The Black Warship rushed straight into the sky from the blasted dome. Tsar Barum and Yang Luching saw the movement of the sword piercing into the sky the moment it appeared. At the same time, a slender mech with 6 eyes soared into the sky from Zatsi Barum's Yonglu City with the help of the carrier aircraft. Amidst the fierce cold wind, it rushed towards the black battleship in the sky. According to Count Zasbrum's order, Yonglu City is to immediately enter an air defense combat state. Before I shoot this warship down from the sky, no one is to act rashly. In the 6-pupil mech named Yaswetel, Fianna looked at the warship and relayed Zasbrum's order to Deucalion. Understood. In Zasbrum's Yonglu City, no one dared to look down on Fianna, who carried the name of Rant. When Zasbrum clearly showed his attention to Fianna and vaguely wanted to cultivate her as a successor, everyone in Zasbrum's Yonglu City subconsciously changed their attitude toward Fianna. This might be the new countess who would take over Yonglu City from Zasbrum. Warning: an abnormal target has appeared near the warship. It's very fast. It's about to come into contact with Deucalion. The moment Euphemia's warning was issued, a tremor suddenly attacked Deucalion. Attack! An attack occurred during Deucalion's ascent. Darzana clenched her teeth, her heart somewhat wavering. If he was attacked by the enemy during the ascent and didn't defend, even if Deucalion could rush into the stratosphere, he would probably suffer a certain degree of damage. There might even be an explosion that would bring disaster to the entire warship. However, if he immediately defended, it would mean that Deucalion would give up the plan of rushing into the stratosphere and launching a surprise attack on Yonglu City from above. He would then face the terrifying firepower of Yonglu City. What should I do? At this moment, Darzana's heart was constantly weighing the pros and cons. The tremors that swept through the entire warship became more and more frequent. The enemy had probably approached Deucalion's smallest defense circle. If this goes on, Deucalion, left rudder 15 level, air defense battle begins. There was no time to hesitate. Since the enemy had rushed to Deucalion's side, there was only one choice left. The only choice. Armored cavalry squad. Prepare to attack. When the hatch opens, assist Deucalion's air defense firepower to stop the enemy's attack. The moment she made the decision, Darzana's thoughts immediately changed from the tactical thinking of a high-altitude raid to thinking of a frontal assault. Vanish. Can you calculate Yonglu City's blind spot? Yes. Based on the current speed and direction, Deucalion would most likely enter Yonglu City's blind spot in 10 minutes. When that time comes, Deucalion will only have to face the ironclad cavalry of Yonglu City. Keiru's eyes darted back and forth from the calculations displayed on the screen, and her brain quickly came up with the answer Darzana wanted. Deucalion, 10 minutes. Attention! From now on, we, Deucalion, must hold out for 10 minutes. Then, after charging into Yonglu City's blind spot, they would launch an assault on Yonglu City. Understood. With the order, Deucalion, who was rushing straight into the sky, suddenly changed his course and faced the air defense firepower of Yonglu City. He abruptly leveled himself and swooped down toward Yonglu City. Leveled? What a bold decision. Fianna, who had forced Deucalion to make such a bold decision, let out a sound of praise. She had the transport plane carrying Yaswetel's circle in the air for half a circle before heading straight for the engine area behind Deucalion. As long as Deucalion's engine area was destroyed, the threat facing Yanglu City would disappear. However, the moment the transport plane carried Yaswaddle to Deucalion's back, a cold, murderous intent suddenly crossed the void and fell on Fianna's head. Knight Captain. Fianna's pupils shrank as soon as she felt the murderous intent. Are they trying to turn the show into reality? In the entire plan, Fianna had many opportunities to fight with Rei Minkai, who was on the side of the Earth Alliance army. In order to not be suspected by their respective factions, Rei Minkai had made it clear from the beginning that there was no need to hold back in the battle. Only in this way could both sides obtain better promotion channels in their respective factions, as well as sources of spying information. Fianna's eyes flickered, but she did not hesitate in her actions. Fly, my dependent. With the order, the steel wings on Yaswaddle's back fell off from the plane. In a burst of flames, the move used by Countess Firmian appeared once again. The steel fist, flickering with purplish-black light, soared into the sky from Yaswaddle's back and pounced toward Deucalion against the fierce cold wind. Rocket Fist. What a troublesome ability. Mustana 22, Mustana 33, I'll leave the flying fist on the left to you. Stop it according to the simulation training. Seeing the steel fist pouncing toward him, Rei Minkai did not hesitate and immediately took the corresponding action. Although the attack of the steel fist was fierce, its weakness was already known. Therefore, even the World Burial Inafan and Net Wenyunzi could easily deal with it. However, the steel fist was not Yaswaddle's main attack method. When Fianna used this move, she didn't have the thought of using it to shoot down Deucalion. Her idea was simple. She wanted to use the steel fist to pin down Rei Minkai and the other team members. Then, she could take the opportunity to break through the anti-air firepower and rush to Deucalion's left flank, launching a fatal attack on Deucalion's engine area. Bang! Bang! Amidst the roar of the H-bombs, the steel fist launched by Yaswaddle was constantly shot down, accelerated, and shot down again. The process repeated over and over again. Seeing the World Burial Inafan and Net Wenyunzi getting more and more comfortable, Rei Minkai showed a look of certainty. He steeled his heart and jumped out of Deucalion's hatch with Ariel. Then, with the help of the propulsion engine on the stabilizer, he jumped onto Deucalion's deck after a few ups and downs. That maneuver was almost beyond what the stabilizer could achieve. Net Wenyunzi, who inadvertently saw the whole process, was stunned for a few seconds. Ariel's stabilizer can achieve that level of maneuver? It's not just gliding. Bang! World Burial Inafan, who was sniping the steel fist that came back, did not even turn her head as she replied indifferently. Wenyunzi, don't look. This is not something you can do. Now, you should pay attention to the movement of the flying fist. Although World Burial Inafan's words were plain, they pierced a needle in Net Wenyunzi's self-esteem. Although this was the truth, World Burial Inafan's words made Net Wenyunzi furious. Inafan, even if it's the truth, you don't have to say that. Between gritting her teeth, Net Wenyunzi could only throw her anger into sniping the steel fist. At the same time, when Ariel, piloted by Rei Minkai, appeared on Deucalion's deck, everyone on the bridge was taken aback by the sudden appearance of Ariel. Captain, that's Mustana 11. Now, he is assisting Deucalion's anti-air firepower to stop the Mars Cuirass cavalry. Euphemia's timely reminder calmed Darzana down a little. I know. There are still 3 minutes before we enter Yanglu City's blind spot. Let everyone hold on. Roger. The 50mm submachine gun in Ariel's hand constantly roared. Sometimes, it would replenish the firepower gap on Deucalion's right flank, and sometimes it would turn to the left flank to stop Yaswaddle, who was trying to rush up. Especially because of Yaswaddle's existence, Ariel spent more time assisting Deucalion's left flank in defense. 2 minutes left? While stopping Yaswaddle from approaching, Rei Minkai casually glanced at the countdown at the bottom right of the screen. 2 minutes left. Fianna saw through Deucalion's movements at a glance. However, on this basis, Fianna had to be able to stop Deucalion at just the right time and also suffer failure at the right time to let Deucalion successfully approach Yanglu City. In other words, what Fianna needed now was not piloting skills, but acting skills. Fianna's eyes flashed coldly. Without hesitation, she piloted Yaswedel and jumped down from the transport plane. Facing Deucalion's anti-air firepower, she landed on Deucalion's deck. When the heavy airframe landed on Deucalion's deck, it actually caused the bow of the ship to sink a little. Helmsman Nina had to exert all her strength before she was able to pull Deucalion's hull back to its original balance. Amidst the sound of gunfire, Yaswedel pulled out the two plasma beam swords at his waist. Drawl, as Fianna's cold voice sounded, two beam swords that Ray Minkai could not avoid lit up. In a dazzling light, as long as Ray Minkai's aerial evaded for even a moment, the bridge behind him would inevitably be hit by the blazing plasma beam swords. Hey, Kai, is this really part of your plan? Looking at the two plasma beam swords surging out, White Cat State Zero, who had been idling from the beginning to the end, cried out. No, this is improvisation. Ray Minkai was a little surprised by Fianna's performance. The original plan of the two was to have a life and death duel before Deucalion rushed to Ascension City. But now, it seemed that Fianna had made a better choice. The blazing heat from the plasma beam swords burned the fierce cold winds, and it even caused the terrifying heat to spread madly towards the surroundings. After that, two plasma beam swords slashed down towards Ariel like a mountain, and it was impossible for him to dodge. In the dazzling light of the plasma beam swords, Ariel, who had his back against the bridge, quickly raised a 50mm submachine gun in his hand and fired a burst of shots at Yaswedel's left hand. The heat bullets only flew a short distance that could only be described as an instant before they exploded into fiery red flowers on Yaswedel's left wrist. Using the impact of the violent explosion, they forcibly stopped the downward slash of Yaswedel's left hand. Then, Ray Minkai gently pulled with his right hand, and the 50mm submachine gun in Ariel's hand was thrown up without any hesitation. It went straight toward the other plasma beam sword. For the invincible plasma beam sword, the 50mm submachine gun thrown by Ariel could not stop the downward slash at all. In the blink of an eye, the 50mm submachine gun was split in half. It was a tragic ending, but this was exactly what Ray Minkai wanted, because the 50mm submachine gun still had a certain amount of ammunition in its magazine. Most of these ammunition magazines were mainly H-type bullets. Therefore, under the unique, blazing temperature of the plasma beam sword, the moment the 50mm submachine gun was split in half, the heat bullets that were still in the magazine exploded. The shock wave caused by the violent explosion of the magazine instantly blew away the invincible plasma beam sword. Then, the opportunity came. The moment the plasma beam blades were blown apart, a pair of giant steel hands brazenly passed through the gap between the plasma beam blades and fiercely grabbed Yaswedel's wrist. Boom! The collision between steel and steel instantly exploded the power furnaces in both sides. From this moment on, the power furnaces in both sides frantically transmitted all the energy they could generate along the energy pipes and mechanical structures to the most direct contest of strength between the two sides. Ga. The metal parts kept wailing under the frantic injection of power from both sides. In the midst of the wailing, Ray Minkai even heard the faint cracking sound of the parts on Ariel's body. Has Ariel reached his limit? Yaswedel's state was far less distressed than Ariel's. Sure enough, the Earth Alliance Army's technology is still slightly inferior. Kai, do you want me to make a move? Ariel's wailing was clearly heard by White Cat State Zero. No, that's enough. Ray Minkai smiled softly and pressed a button with his left thumb. The magazine carried by Ariel's waist suddenly shot out and flew between Yaswedel's wrist at lightning speed, hitting the plasma beam sword that had just returned to its original state. Boom! Boom! The two magazines that collided with the plasma beam blade that was recovering its power exploded with a loud bang. Moreover, the explosion was even stronger than the explosion caused by the magazine that had consumed half of its power. Amidst the roaring explosion, the two plasma beam swords in Yaswedal's hands had a crack from the explosion. Moreover, it was getting bigger and bigger. It was so big that if Yaswedal let go, the two plasma beam swords would dissipate with the wind. Clang! Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ariel's tactical dagger flashed and went straight for Yaswedal. However, this stab did not hit Yaswedal. Instead, the moment it was about to stab Yaswedal, Ariel turned his wrist and threw the tactical dagger in his hand, hitting the missile flying from the right. Boom! Under Arian's miraculous dagger throw, the missile that suddenly appeared suddenly exploded, setting off a burst of thick smoke that obscured Arian's vision. Although the smoke did not cover Ariel's vision for long, it was blown away by the fierce cold wind. However, Yaswedal's figure had already disappeared from Deucalion's deck. Fianna, you've done well. Now, leave this to me. Go back and command the defense of Yonglu City. In the wind and snow, a larger and more oppressive body than Ariel stepped on a carrier and appeared in front of Ray Minkai. Count Zasbrum. Chapter 458. Count Zasbrum. But the moment Dioscuri appeared in front of Arion, Euphemia let out a small cry of surprise. Due to the life and death struggle with Fianna, the only weapon Ray Minkai's Arion could use was the tactical dagger. In the face of Dioscuri, who had a variety of powerful weapons, he was stretched thin. Euphemia, do you know the origin of that airframe? When Ray Minkai was about to successfully expel Yaswedal, Darzana, who was disturbed by the sudden appearance of Dioscuri, immediately asked, Dioscuri, that's the name of the airframe. The name of the pilot who piloted it was Count Zasbrum, one of the Orbital 3 Knight. As soon as Euphemia's voice fell, Ethelum's voice sounded in the communication channel. Obviously, Ethelum had been on the line from the beginning, quietly waiting for a moment to come. Count Zasbrum? How could it be him? Among the Orbital 37 Knight, Zasbrum's strength could be said to be ranked in the top. Not good. Now Warrant Officer Ray is in danger. Captain, please support him immediately. Ethelum did not even think about it, and immediately asked Darzana for support. However, even if Darzana wanted to send people to support Ray Minkai, it would be difficult to do so, because although Yaswedal had been repelled by Ray Minkai, after Dioscuri took over the battle with Arion, it was free to constantly harass Deucalion. In order to prevent the uproar in Yaswedal from further affecting Deucalion's raid, Insail and the cuirassiers under the command of Netwin Yunzi had to remain on Deucalion's ship. In this way, the only person who could support Ray Minkai was Insei, whose left arm had not yet recovered and could only rely on a medical stent to move. Captain, give the order. Although I'm a wounded person, now is not the time to only consider my injury. Like Ethelum, Insei, who was on standby from the beginning, took the initiative to request for battle. However, before Darzana could agree to Insei's request, on the bridge, as the commander of the armored cavalry squad, Juhu Koichiro rejected Insei's request. No, Captain, Insei's injury is not enough to participate in the battle. Therefore, only I can pilot Arion on this battleship. As soon as Juhu Koichiro's words came out, Darzana was puzzled. Captain Juhu, according to the opinion of Dr. Yekigura Raiman, you can't pilot any airframe to fight. Even if you use death, you can. Are you sure you can't jump out of this battleship and then sit in the cockpit while screaming, let's? Darzana's rebuttal was harsh, but it was the truth. During the journey of Deucalion's evacuation to the Earth Alliance headquarters, even if Ray Minkai's participation caused Deucalion's combat power to not decrease significantly, Juhu Koichiro still followed the original trajectory of fate. He boarded Arion again and again in the battle, trying to overcome the nightmare that had been haunting him for 15 years. However, the result was that he fainted in the cockpit again and again, unconscious. Captain, Insei once told me that maybe at some point there will be an opportunity in front of me. As long as I reach out and grab this opportunity, maybe the predicament I'm facing will be overcome. Juhu Koichiro took a deep breath and frankly spoke of his cowardice. Yes, I'm a coward. I'm a coward who was scared out of his wits by the shocking event 15 years ago. But because of this, I know it's time for me to stand up. In order to prevent the tragedy from happening again, and also to pay tribute to the comrades who died in that shocking event. When Darzana heard Juhu Koichiro mention the shocking event 15 years ago, her eyes suddenly became fierce. But after Juhu Koichiro faced her fierce gaze without fear, her attitude softened and nodded. Very good. Since Captain Juhu has realized it, then let's attack. However, Ensei will still be on standby as a reserve team. As long as Captain Juhu has an accident, Ensei will immediately enter the battle and support Ensei. Understood. Thank you, Captain. Yubei Koichiro, who had received permission, had yet to step outside the bridge when he heard Darzana faintly say a few words. My real name is Darzana Humra. 15 years ago, Humra, who died in the Tanegashima incident, was my brother. Juhu Koichiro's footsteps paused, and his face was suddenly occupied by panic. However, in the next second, Juhu Koichiro gritted his teeth and took a few steps forward. The moment his back was completely covered by the automatic door, he suddenly ran and rushed toward Neku like the wind. The tactical dagger drew sparks on the cold armor, but it did not cause much effective damage to it. With the help of the stabilizer, Arion, who was holding the tactical dagger, relied on the propulsion engine and the cold wind that swept across the ice field to fight for a chance to survive under Dioscuri's attack. What a surprise! I didn't expect there to be such a skilled knight on Earth. Relying on Dioscuri's powerful strength, Zasbrum was very relaxed when facing Rei Minkai's Arion. This was not only because of Dioscuri's own variety of weapons and equipment, but also because Arion was only left with the tactical dagger in his hand. As long as Dioscuri used the two rockets behind him properly, Arion would not be able to cause any damage at all. He could even firmly control Arion in a certain area. TSK, did I use too much strength in my performance just now? The current Arion could really be described as running out of ammunition and food. Even if Rei Minkai's piloting skills were very good, he could not fight for a chance to survive in this predicament. Unless let me do it. White Cat State Zero was eager to try. No, it's not time for you to do it. What? You don't want me to do it? This broken body is only left with a dagger. What can it do? Do you think this body is a flaming demonic sword? Can it kill the enemy with bare hands? Suddenly, as White Cat State Zero was muttering and constantly belittling Arion, a burst of rapid gunfire sounded. The bullets that broke through the obstruction of the cold wind and drew a barrage between Dioscuri and Arion suddenly forced Dioscuri to retreat. What? Reinforcements? Zasbrum frowned, but he saw another Arion jump out from behind and block in front of Rei Minkai's Arion. Warrant Officer Rei, go back and resupply now. Leave this to me. At this moment, the one who appeared in front of Rei Minkai was Juhu Koichiro, who had just asked for the battle. Captain Juhu, it seems that you have reached out and grabbed the opportunity. The appearance of Juhu Koichiro surprised Rei Minkai. Is that so? Then go and resupply. Then cover Deucalion and rush into Mars Yanglu City. Leave this to me. From Juhu Koichiro's words, Rei Minkai felt his determination. However, before turning around and leaving, Rei Minkai said something that surprised Juhu Koichiro. Captain Juhu, Dioscuri's pilot, is Count Zasbrum. He participated in the Battle of Tanegashima 15 years ago, and he is also the fiancé of the pilot who piloted the Iron Cavalry Deucalion. The accidents that followed shocked Juhu Koichiro. First, Darzana revealed her identity. Then he learned from Rei Minkai about the identity of Orbit Knight, who brought him nightmares during the Battle of Tanegashima. Is that so? If that's the case, life is really a nightmare. While sighing, Yubei Koichiro moved his hands. His Arion immediately raised its muzzle and aimed at Dioscuri, shooting wildly. Suddenly, Juhu Koichiro's right hand shook, and the nightmare 15 years ago reappeared in front of his eyes. Flames, the strange Martian body, and the wailing comrade in his arms. You dare to bother me at this time? Damn it! Juhu Koichiro gritted his teeth and shouted loudly. Captain Lei, quick, quick! There's only 1 minute left. Amidst the shrill screams, Yubei Koichiro's Arion crazily fired all the ammunition in his 50mm submachine gun at Dioscuri. Zasbrum was amused by the undisciplined shooting, and he said coldly, You're not going anywhere. Meaningless struggle. Bang! A sudden explosion obscured most of Dioscuri's vision. It turned out that there was a rifle grenade mixed in with the random shots. Taking advantage of the exploding smoke, Yubei Koichiro gritted his teeth and drove his Arion through the smoke while enduring the torture of the nightmares. He caught Dioscuri off guard and pushed him away from Deucalion's assault route. Dioscuri fell heavily to the ground in the howling wind. This scene was seen by Ray Minkai, who had just returned to the hatch. TSK, that guy wants to sacrifice himself for a cause. White Cat Zero narrowed its eyes. White Cat Zero also saw Juhu Koichiro's state. It did not expect that a man who had boarded the body many times and fainted in the cockpit would have such a tough moment. That's a man. State Zero. In the snowstorm that gradually covered the sky, Deucalion's figure became more and more hazy until he disappeared in Dioscuri's optical electronic eyes. Oomph. The snowstorm is getting heavier. But this doesn't change the fact that you are about to be defeated by us. Zasbrum retracted his gaze from the vast expanse of whiteness that covered the sky and looked again at Arion, who was standing not far ahead. If it were not for the appearance of Arion, the warship that he regarded as ominous would have been shot down long ago. Before that, I'll let you become a sacrifice to Viscount Volley. A strange light flashed, and a layer of seemingly black screen that could swallow light instantly unfolded. The snowflakes and ice fragments set off by the snowstorm that swept through the world continued to ripple on this layer of screen and then disappeared under the gaze of Juhu Koichiro. Is this the layer of screen that Warrant Officer Lei mentioned? That's a foul. Da-da-da. Gunshots rang out again, but the whistling bullets followed the ending of the snowflakes. They were swallowed by the layer of screen that swallowed everything, and only ripples could be seen on the screen. Oomph. A meaningless struggle. In the whistling snowstorm, Dioscuri raised his right hand, and at the moment when the whiteness that covered the sky was swallowed, he slammed it down on Arion like a mountain. Juhu Koichiro's vision turned black, and Arion's hands and even his chest armor disappeared in an instant. In an instant, not only was he faced with the cold air brought by the snowstorm, but he was also faced with death. It was the same feeling of powerlessness and fear that arose in the face of the overwhelming power of the Mars armored cavalry that descended from the sky in the Battle of Seed Island 15 years ago. This expression is really good. Perhaps this is the scene that Viscount Volley saw back then. In front of Zasbrum's eyes was the facial expression of Juhu Koichiro that was magnified several times. Sitting in the cockpit that was filled with snowstorm and had lost any protection, the fear on Juhu Koichiro's face was real. Dioscuri slowly raised his huge wrist and slammed it down on Arion again. However, at that moment, Zasbrum suddenly felt that something seemed to be falling from the top of his head from the whiteness. Whoosh! Boom! In an instant, a more ear-piercing and louder roar than the snowstorm tore through the sky, and a huge shadow covered Dioscuri and Arion from above. TSK. Zasbrum didn't dare to rashly try to see if his Dioscuri's screen could swallow the shadow that suddenly fell from the sky, so he could only choose to avoid it for the time being. Boom! As soon as Dioscuri left in front of Arion, the shadow that fell from the sky fell heavily on Dioscuri's original position. When a violent impact shook the ice chips all over the ground into the sky, Juhu Koichiro, who was controlled by fear, woke up from his nightmare. Gee! A faint sound of air being released penetrated the snowstorm and rushed into Juhu Koichiro's ears. Then, Between the slowly falling ice chips, Juhu Koichiro saw an airframe that he had never seen before. It was a silver-gray airframe that was lighter and more powerful than Arion's. Moreover, as the head of the silver-gray airframe in front of him slowly opened, Juhu Koichiro saw that there seemed to be no one else in the cockpit of this airframe. At this moment, Juhu Koichiro suddenly remembered what Ray Minkai said before. "Captain Juhu, I hope that when the opportunity comes, you can reach out and grab it." As this sentence echoed in his mind, before Juhu Koichiro could think, his body began to move. He quickly unfastened the seatbelt, then struggled to jump up from Arion's cockpit and landed on the silver-gray airframe. This is an unfamiliar cockpit, a cockpit without any joystick. The unfamiliar driving environment made Juhu Koichiro's mind quickly return to reality. "DDD, a pilot has been detected entering. Please report your name and unit." An unfamiliar electronic synthesized voice sounded. This, Captain Juhu was stunned for a moment before he subconsciously replied, "Juhu Koichiro, Captain, belongs to the Earth Alliance Army. ID confirmed. Welcome, Captain Juhu. System activated. I am the BMS-01 Experimental Humanoid Combat Armor. Code Alpha. Please allow me to join your war." Chapter 459. Alpha. Just as Yubei Koichiro muttered the name, a violent impact suddenly hit him. In the violent dizziness, Yubei Koichiro, who was dazed by the violent impact, finally came back to his senses. He found that he was completely fine, and even the body that had just claimed to have logged in his information did not have any malfunction. The image on the screen in front of him was still clear, so clear that he could even see the snowflakes melting on Dioscuri's rocket fist as it descended from the sky and returned to Dioscuri. "I'm fine." Obviously, Yubei Koichiro, who had witnessed the power of the rocket, was very surprised that he could still stand on the battlefield at this moment. He couldn't imagine what could allow him to survive the threat of the rocket. Confirming that the pilot's mental wave is consistent with the activation standard. Lambda drive system activated. In surprise, the electronically synthesized voice that claimed to be Alpha gave an answer that confused Yubei Koichiro. "Lambda drive system? What the hell is this?" Even though there were a lot of questions in his stomach, Yubei Koichiro still gritted his teeth and used the extremely unfamiliar somatosensory control system to drive the unfamiliar body to move. He knew that as long as he was not careful, the opponent would seize the opportunity to send him to meet his comrade who died under his gun 15 years ago. Clumsy, blunt, Yubei Koichiro, who used the somatosensory control system for the first time, was like a baby who had just learned to walk. He stumbled on the ice field. That look infuriated Zasbarum. Originally, the rocket was the last blow that Zasbarum would use to send Yubei Koichiro to hell. But to Dioscuri's surprise, a translucent screen shrouded the strange-looking silver-gray airframe without warning, and at the same time, bounced back Dioscuri's rocket punch. What the hell is that? Screen? Defensive force field? A new technology jointly developed by the Earth? Looking at Alpha, who was stumbling across the ice field, even if Zasbarum had doubts in his heart, they were all drowned out by the rising anger. It was too ugly. If it was normal practice, there would always be a lot of time for Yubei Koichiro to familiarize himself with the unfamiliar somatosensory manipulation system, but now he was in the middle of a life-and-death battle. Kebe Koichiro didn't understand what the lambda drive system was. He only knew that if he didn't master the somatosensory control system that could make the body follow his movements as soon as possible, death would await him. Where on earth did Warrant Officer Lay get such an airframe? Is it a new model secretly developed by the military? The ice field under Alpha's feet was constantly cracked by him. After climbing and rolling for a while, Yubei Koichiro's driving skills gradually stabilized. He roughly figured out how much force he needed to exert to make the somatosensory control system do the actions he wanted. Beep, beep, beep. Warning. The missile was closing in. Quantity 10. Amidst the whistling wind, 10 missiles soared into the air. above the powerful jet engines. They neatly flew straight towards Alpha. Not good. Yubei Koichiro subconsciously tightened and contracted his legs. Alpha's somatosensory control system immediately responded. No, it should be an overreaction. Amidst the roar of the missile, Alpha bent his legs and suddenly leaped high into the air. Riding on the shock wave caused by the missile's explosion on the ice field, he soared straight into the sky, rushing straight up dozens of meters or even nearly 100 meters in the air. That amazing jumping ability, not to mention Kebe Koichiro, even Zasbrum, who was watching from the sidelines, was surprised. What kind of monster is this? How can it jump to such a high height without relying on the propulsion engine? What kind of monster has the Earth United developed? Killing intent filled Zasbrum's mind at this moment. Without any hesitation, Dioscuri's hands slammed together, and then the propulsion engine behind him burst out with all the power it had. In the wind and snow, the huge and oppressive Dioscuri soared straight into the sky, chasing after Alpha. Looking at Alpha, who was getting closer and closer, Zasbrum said in a deep voice, "Katana." As soon as his voice fell, two huge plasma beam blades suddenly gushed out from Dioscuri's palms. Earthling, go to hell. Wherever the blazing plasma beam soared past by, even the cold winds that swept through the icy plains had to retreat. The snowflakes and ice shards that filled the sky turned into streams of hot water before evaporating, turning into streaks of blurry illusions within the sword light. However, when the plasma beam blades with terrifying attack power were about to hit Alpha, the translucent screen that had just bounced off the rocket appeared again, blocking Dioscuri's plasma beam blades, and they could no longer move forward. What? This force field again? Relying on the screen that appeared again to block Dioscuri's death sword, Alpha, after tumbling a few times in the air, was finally able to land steadily on the ice field. Hey! Finally, I got the hang of it. When the plasma beam blade struck him, Yubei Koichiro almost thought that he was going to die like this. But just like Zasbrum, Juhu Koichiro didn't expect that the sudden appearance of the screen would save him again. Alpha, that screen just now is the lambda drive system you mentioned? Yubei Koichiro, who gradually understood the somatosensory control system, finally had the time to ask about this body. Yes. The lambda drive system is triggered when the pilot's mental fluctuations reach a certain standard. Its obvious characteristic is that it produces a direct physical reaction to the pilot's defensive instincts when he is in a life-and-death crisis. Alpha's electronically synthesized voice was very cold, but the meaning of his words surprised Yubei Koichiro. In an instant, Yubei Koichiro remembered the words that Rei Minkai mentioned to him before. Fear is also a way for humans to gain strength. Fear. Because of fear, humans will seek the power to protect themselves and the power to overcome fear. Because of fear, I became a coward. Because of fear, I refused to sit in Aryan and join the battle again. On the screen in front of him was Dioscuri, who was approaching step by step. That huge body, that oppressive feeling that was powerful enough to overwhelm everything reminded Yubei Koichiro of that day. Just like now, the enemy's attack methods were extremely powerful, making people unable to raise any thoughts of resistance. Boom! The missile rose into the air again. The rocket punch flew out from Dioscuri's body again. Enough! Earthling, no matter what means you have now, die. The strange feeling exuded by Alpha made Zasbrum feel more and more uncomfortable. For this reason, he did not hesitate to use all the weapons outside the dimensional screen in order to kill Alpha. Missiles, rocket punch. They frantically rushed toward Alpha from all directions. At the same time, behind this wave of attacks, there were two plasma beam blades in Dioscuri's hands that could cut through the protective armor equipped by the Earth Alliance Army. Kill. This was Zasbrum's killing blow. According to his plan, even if the weird screen appeared again, it would not be able to block all of Dioscuri's attacks. At that time, the plasma beam blade would be the requiem that would bury this weird silver-gray mech. The translucent screen that had blocked the attack appeared once again. Moreover, it effortlessly blocked the missiles and even blocked the rocket punches that came after it. Boom! Boom! Amidst the gorgeous fireworks set off by the explosion of the missile, the rocket punch was bounced off the screen and shot straight into the sky. Dioscuri's two plasma beam blades finally slashed hard on Alpha's screen. This time, he was actually standing on the cold ground and chopping down. Unlike the previous slash in the air, Alpha, as the target, had nowhere to dodge and could only take the slash from Dioscuri. Warning! Warning! The enemy's attack exceeded expectations. Exceeded expectations. According to the current data analysis, the engine's power furnace will overload due to overload after 30 seconds, and it is very likely to self-destruct at that time. The pilot is advised to evacuate immediately. Evacuate immediately. Evacuate. So far, the performance of Alpha had refreshed Kebe Koichiro's understanding of the Iron Cavalry. He mistakenly thought that Alpha was a type of Iron Cavalry. Powerful sports performance. Flexible mechanical response. And a lambda drive system that could respond to the pilot's spirit. Even with such powerful capabilities, the mysterious system's body still wanted to make him flee again. How could Kebe Koichiro accept such a suggestion? No, I won't escape. I won't escape again. Under such circumstances, even if it's you, you still won't forgive me. Humra. The screen in front of him flashed dangerously red, and the warning sound of the power furnace approaching overload sounded in his ears, but Kebe Koichiro still roared unwillingly. Under the nightmare, the man who had escaped for 15 years, at this moment, when faced with the nightmare from Mars again, he decided not to escape anymore. If the body he was in now was really like what Rei Minkai said, it could let Kebe Koichiro, who had been shrouded in fear for 15 years, control the fear and gain the power to defeat the nightmare. Then, the man named Judo Koichiro will not run away again today. Come on, Martian. If you can kill me, just come on. As Kebe Koichiro's spirit became more and more high, the nightmare that had haunted him for 15 years quietly appeared, but it also quietly disappeared. Then, as the nightmare faded away, the screen that blocked the plasma beam blade became brighter and brighter. Ripples that looked like starlight emerged from the point where the plasma beam blade came into contact with the screen. The ripples accelerated and spread outwards. An even more powerful force was suddenly generated and pushed the plasma beam blade back in an astonishing manner. What? This power? Get out of here! Kebe Koichiro roared loudly. He didn't know why he was like this. He only knew that at this moment, he just wanted to vent all the gloom that had accumulated from being haunted by nightmares for 15 years. As if sensing Kebe Koichiro's strong emotions at this moment, the Lambda Drive system responded by stimulating all the power it could exert. Following Kebe Koichiro's thoughts, it poured towards Dioscuri like a storm. Boom, boom, boom. Alpha didn't have any firearms in his hands. However, the white light emitted from its hand was like a powerful cannonball, forcing Dioscuri to retreat continuously. There were no physical cannonballs. There was no sign of gunpowder explosion. There was only the frantic lock-on warning sound, as well as the explosive impact that constantly attacked Dioscuri. What's going on? What's going on? What kind of attack is this? Cannonball. The physical shock wave that erupted from the Lambda Drive system caught Zasbram off guard. He clearly didn't see Alpha equipped with any firearms, but he could launch an attack that was almost exactly the same as a submachine gun. Could it be that there was a submachine gun hidden in Alpha's arms that was difficult to detect? Little trick. It's just a little trick. Earthling. The rocket that circled back and forth around Dioscuri changed its flight trajectory and once again locked onto Alpha. When the wind and thunder roared, it rushed straight towards Alpha from the front. Boom! Boom! The physical shockwave from a Lambda Drive system was naturally received by this pair of rocket punches without hesitation. However, after resisting 2 or 3 physical shock waves, The flying posture of the rocket gradually became problematic, and it could no longer maintain its original straight flight. Boom! Suddenly, with a new round of physical shock waves, the rocket that barely maintained its flying posture finally tilted to the side, crashing into a burst of ice. But this was not Dioscuri's only trick. At the same time, when the rocket hit the ice field, the missile hidden behind it followed closely. The moment it broke through the ice, splashing in the air, it exploded on the spot. Boom! The violent explosion blasted a huge gap in the ice field below in the blink of an eye. The dregs mixed with ice, water, and mud were scattered high into the air, blocking Alpha's vision. Go to hell, despicable Earthling! Amidst the dregs, the unique light of the plasma beam blade tore through the dregs, and also tore through the wind and snow, sending the ion roar that represented death to Juhu Koichiro. It was a flash of light. The gray-white radiance that symbolized death slashed across Alpha's waist. Even so, Zasbaram's heart skipped a beat, and he instinctively controlled his aircraft to retreat quickly. No, it's an afterimage. However, it was too late. Boom! The physical shock wave that erupted from the Lambda drive system appeared again, and it directly bombarded Dioscuri's waist in a near-zero distance. The powerful impact instantly dragged Dioscuri's system into a state of outage, and Zasbaram fell into a coma. Looking at Dioscuri, who fell into a dead silence because of the system outage, Juhu Koichiro gasped for breath and laughed at himself. Humra, see, I'm so timid, but I can still do it. Although I'm just a little lucky. As soon as Juhu Koichiro finished his self-mocking words, his vision suddenly turned black, and he fell into darkness together with Alpha, who had overloaded the Lambda drive system. Chapter 460. Alpha and Dioscuri, Yubei Koichiro and Zasbaram. The fierce battle between these two pairs did not affect the warship Deucalion's attack on Yonglu City. The only one who knew the whole process of this fierce battle was Rei Minkai, who stopped Arian and Neku to receive emergency supplies. Hey, that man is really going all out. He actually drove an unfamiliar body and fought to a draw with the enemy. White Cat Zero squinted its eyes and slightly raised the corner of its mouth. It seemed to be very appreciative of Yubei Koichiro's performance. This is the power overdraft. If there's a next time, Yubei Koichiro may not be able to use this level of power again. Due to the extreme power that erupted from the fear 15 years ago, Yubei Koichiro may not be able to use the same power again for some time in the future. That's enough to surprise people. It's just the first time he boarded a body with a Lambda drive system, and he can use power beyond expectations. Yubei Koichiro may be the most suitable pilot in this world to use the Lambda drive system. White Cat Zero's tail swayed gently, and its voice also expressed its approval. Yes, this is also the reason why I found Yubei Koichiro, a man who has been haunted by a nightmare for 15 years without collapsing into a desperate situation that would make ordinary people commit suicide to atone for their sins. No matter how you look at it, he has the basic qualifications to use the Lambda drive system. Rei Minkai nodded, then looked at the screen and looked at the ammunition stock on the screen that was constantly rising. However, this is also a matter for the future. Now, let's solve the problem in front of us. Boom! As soon as Rei Minkai's voice fell, a violent tremor suddenly swept through the entire warship. The violent tremor even caught the crew who were resupplying ammunition for Arian off guard, and they were almost injured by the flying tools. Fortunately, Rei Minkai's eyes were sharp and his hands were agile. He quickly made Arian bend down and stretched out his hand to block some of the flying tools. At the same time, he held onto the ammunition box that almost fell to the ground. Only then did he survive the sudden shock. Has Deucalion already crashed into Yonglu City? Rei Minkai glanced at the crew who were standing at Arrivan's feet and thanking him profusely. He then opened the communication link to the bridge. UFFI. Did Deucalion crash into it? Yes. Kai. Now Deucalion has already crashed into Yonglu City. Before Euphemia's voice fell, Darzana's voice sounded. Squad Mustana. Now, immediately cover Princess Islam to enter Yonglu City. Quick, time is running out. Be careful of the mech's surprise attack. You don't have to worry about Deucalion's safety for now. Yes, understood. Jiamound Inafan and Net Text Yunzi's mecha followed closely behind Lei Mingkai's arrowing. They were ready to charge into Shanglu City. However, before that, Jiamound and Afan looked at Lei Mingkai's Aryan and asked, Mustana 11, you should be low on ammo right now. The position of striker should be taken by me. Lei Mingkai was surprised by Inafan's words. However, he smiled and said, it's true that we don't have enough ammunition, but the position of the vanguard is not up to you two students. After saying that, Lei Mingkai's Aryan stepped forward and quickly rushed out of the open hatch. At the same time, he raised the newly equipped 50mm submachine gun in his hand and repeatedly fired at the unmanned shells around him, trying his best to remove the threat around Rokalion. Seeing this, Inabane and Netsuin Yunzi also joined in removing the surrounding turrets to eliminate the threat around Deucalion as much as possible, and also to pave the way for Princess One, the two-person Aryan that Selim was riding. The three huge humanoid armors were holding 50mm submachine guns as they slowly moved forward. They continuously destroyed the shells around them, causing the wise soldiers who tried to snipe Scullion with their semi-automatic submachine guns to suffer an overwhelming blow. The guns in their hands could not penetrate Aryan's armor at all. The only thing that could cause damage to Aryan was the shoulder-fired anti-armor missiles. However, amidst the gunfire, the moment the wise soldiers quietly appeared with the anti-armor missiles, they were instantly locked on by the White Cat Zero and led Lei Mingkai to attack them. The heat bullets from the 50mm submachine guns rained down like a torrential rain, setting off deadly fireballs in the makeshift formation of the wise soldiers. This was a massacre. It was an overwhelming massacre. It was also an unavoidable massacre. As long as these wise soldiers blocked Aryan's path and prevented Selim from going to the core of Yonglu City, where the LD Noah reactor was located, the massacre would continue. Mustana 22, Mustana 33, guard the sides and rear. Cover Princess One at all times. Lei Mingkai's voice was indifferent, as if he was not affected by the wise soldiers who died tragically under the 50mm submachine guns. On the contrary, World Catacomb Inafan's face did not look too good, especially web writer Yunzi, who was somewhat resistant to battle but had no choice but to participate in it, was shocked by the tragic scene in front of her. It was the first time she saw with her own eyes the result of fighting against armored cavalry with a body of flesh and blood. Ma, Inafan, are you not afraid? Stretching out her trembling fingers, she tried several times to turn off the screen in front of her. She no longer paid attention to the tragic scene on the ground. She subconsciously asked her childhood sweetheart for help. No, it's just some organic matter that has lost its biological reaction. It's not a big deal. Also, Yunzi, that's the enemy. Standing on the battlefield, if you hesitate against the enemy, you will die. Although World Catacomb Inafan's face was getting paler, his words were still as calm and steady as usual. You, Inafan, do you understand what I'm saying? After being interrupted by World Catacomb Inafan, web writer Yunzi miraculously stopped paying attention to the tragic situation around her. Instead, she focused on providing defensive support for Princess One. On the other side, Fianna's Yaswedel had just returned to the sky above Yonglu City. The emergency communication from Yonglu City was connected to Yaswedel. Miss Fianna, we have lost contact with Count Zasbarum, and Yonglu City is being invaded. Please advise. When Yonglu City launched the attack, Zasbarum had said that Yonglu City could be handed over to Fianna to command when he attacked. Therefore, the moment they lost contact with Zasbarum, Yonglu City did not hesitate to seek guidance from Fianna. You lost contact with Count Zasbarum? How could that be? This fact surprised Fianna. This change did not seem to have appeared in the plan. In other words, now, Fianna had to rely on her own improvisation to deal with the following changes. I wonder what happened to the Knight Captain. Now, it seems that Deucalion's invasion is a foregone conclusion. Fianna's brain was working frantically. Compared to the days when she only cared about pushing through the enemy with Killigoo, the current operation was somewhat taxing on Fianna's mind. Everyone listened to my order. Concentrate all forces to guard the core area where the ALDNOH reactor is located. The enemy's goal is very simple, which is to cover Princess Islam to rush to the area where the ALDNOH reactor is located and then stop the operation of the ALDNOH reactor in Yanglu City. In this way, the enemy will win, and we will become defeated cowards. Yes, Miss Fianna, please command us to guard Yanglu City. Fianna had just finished speaking her opinion when Yanglu City immediately took the necessary action. Very good. Before Count Zasbrum returns, we must guard Yanglu City to the death. Fianna muttered to herself for a moment, and then proposed another idea with some uncertainty. Can you hold on for a while? I want to find Count Zasbrum and bring him back. Unexpectedly, the moment Fianna proposed this idea, a wave of incomparable approval followed, which made Fianna somewhat incredulous. This was inevitable. Now that they had lost contact with Count Zasbrum, there was an unerasable shadow in Yanglu City that lingered in their hearts. If Count Zasbrum, who had lost contact with them, suddenly died while they were fighting a bloody battle to protect Yanglu City, the LDNOH reactor in Yanglu City would still be in a state where it would stop operating. At that time, Islam would not need to personally take action at all, and Yanglu City would still lose all power to fight back. For this reason, and in order to obtain the final victory in the battle to protect Yanglu City, Zasbrum's safety must be guaranteed. I got it. Please hold on. After Fianna heard the explanation from the bridge of Yanglu City, she immediately took advantage of the situation and left Yanglu City. Knight Captain, it's up to you now. Boom. The moment the anti-armor missile hit the wall, it exploded, scaring Arian, who was about to rush out from behind the bunker, back in fear. That was close. That was close. I was almost hit. Wenyanzi breathed a sigh of relief and patted her chest repeatedly. Mustana 22. Be careful. The enemy's resistance has strengthened. The closer they were to the central area of the ALDNOH reactor, the stronger the resistance. The single anti-armor missiles that had been sparsely seen before were now being used by almost every soldier. As long as Rei Mingkai's iron cavalry showed the slightest sign of coming out, they would immediately be met with 2 or 3 missiles. Breakthrough. Sprainer of World Mound in Naysail moved his hands, indicating that he could be the vanguard and give the wiser soldiers who were blocking their advance a taste of howitzers. Rei Mingkai did not open his mouth to agree to World Mound in Naysail's request. Before he could say anything, Isilam's voice came from Princess No. 1, which had been following behind him all this while. Warrant Officer Ray, and everyone, I know there's a path that can lead to the core area of the ALDNOH reactor. Right now, we're right on top of this path. However, that path doesn't have enough space for the iron cavalry to walk. Really? Wenyanzi suddenly shouted in surprise. The blockade of the wiser soldiers was indeed a headache for Wenyanzi. If they could avoid them, Wenyanzi would be the first to agree. Mustana 11, what do you think? World Mountain Asail looked at Rei Mingkai's Arion. Let's move. It's just that Princess 1, Mustana 22, and 33 will stay here to attract the enemy's attention. As for me, I will go to the core area with Princess Asiram to stop the ALD Noah reactor. What? Only Warrant Officer Ray and Princess Islam will go? The pilot of Princess 1 was surprised by Rei Mingkai's arrangement. According to the resistance in front of them, they would be blocked even more when they approached the ALDNOH reactor. How could Rei Mingkai alone be able to safely send Princess Islam to the ALDNOH reactor? However, World Mountain Asail did not hesitate to accept Rei Mingkai's arrangement. Click! Boom! Sleipnir's hands moved, and the rifle grenades that had been prepared suddenly rose from behind the bunker, drew an arc in the air, and exploded above the enemy's head. In an instant, screams were heard everywhere. Mustana 11. Chance. World Mount and Asail use its own actions to prove that it unconditionally obeyed Rei Minkai's arrangement. I don't care. Since a Nasail did this, then I also believe in Mustana 11's arrangement. Web writer Yoshiko, who had no idea what to do next, made what she thought was the right decision in one breath. That was to act together with World Mount and Asail. TSK. Warrant Officer Ray. I'll leave Her Highness to you. Leave this to me and those two brats. Most of the pilots of Princess 1 finally obeyed Rei Minkai's arrangement. Thank you. I'll leave this to you. Your Highness, move quickly. Rei Minkai's Aryan turned around and opened the cockpit in the shadows in the corner. At the same time, Rei Minkai also jumped to the foot of Princess 1 and opened his arms to Isilaram. Quick, jump down. Princess Isilaram. Isilaram glanced at Aryan, who was still a certain height even though it was half squatting on the ground. In the end, she closed her eyes and jumped down toward Rei Minkai's position. As the wind blew, the pain that Isilaram imagined did not come. Instead, she fell into a strong and powerful embrace. Princess Isilaram, you're very brave. Now we have to move quickly. Tell me what to do next. Rei Minkai's voice made Isilaram slowly open her eyes and pointed in another direction in a daze. Then, Rei Minkai carried Isilaram and a princess, Carrie, and rushed toward the path that led directly to the Yeldian OH reactor. Sorry. Please forgive me. Princess Isilaram, this will be faster. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.